We paint tiny people and we play with them. We paint tiny people and we play with them.
Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of Miniatures Monthly. It is the very last day of 2017. And my name is Chris Thurston, and as ever, I am joined by Tom Senior.
Good day.
Hello, Tom.
Hello.
Welcome to the last day of 2017.
It's about to end.
What have we done with it? What have we done with it?
We painted lots of little things. Beautiful little things.
We painted things. I mean, specifically today, though.
Oh, today? I thought you meant more generally, as in like a life thing. Oh, so today we played some Warhammer.
We played Warhammer, basically.
We played
That's
Warhammer all
That's
day.
more or less what I'd like to take away from 2017 as well.
Great. Yeah.
If we're slow to answer questions like that in the podcast, it's because each of us have probably drank most of a thing of beer each.
It was good.
Thanks, Warhammer.
Lovely.
Good. And a Merry New Year to our listeners. Obviously, that was very dour. I'm sorry.
It's very official.
It was very the news. I went to look at my papers and
Next on today.
Next on Miniatures Monthly. This is literally the news, though. That was my segue into the news segment. Wow, off to a rollicking start. So there has been the big news that feels like is looming on the horizon. Because it literally is at the time we're recording this, days away from actually being announced.
Is it portentous, you might say?
It is portentous. It's Malign Portents, which is whatever it is that Age of Sigmar has been building up to. This was the event that was announced alongside the first Herald, which was the Knight of Shrouds, the
very cool death.
Very cool death model.
And
they've since confirmed that the Dark Oath War Queen, the barbarian lady, is the Chaos Herald. They've revealed the Destruction Herald, which is what the fuck is his name? I've completely forgotten. It's a Night Goblin.
He's had an accident with a mushroom.
Accident?
Well, he probably intended it to happen.
Let's have a quick look. I'm just going to look it up quickly because we should try and remember what things are called. The Fungoid Cave Shaman.
Okay, lovely. And
which is nice because it's the first, Night Goblin range is super old.
Yeah.
And, sorry. I say Night Goblin. What I mean is Moon Clan Grod.
Of course.
And this is the first new model in that range for a long time. And it's fucking mad, as you'd expect.
Yep. And as you'd hope, I suppose. I mean, their whole thing was always consuming mushrooms to improve their, well, I don't know about improve, enhance their battlefield experience. And with this guy has gone a step further and sort of become one with the mushrooms, growing out of his head. He's got them coming out of his, everywhere.
Yeah, and his nose and chin have armor.
Yeah.
That forms his face into a moon, which is nice.
I like that as well. Yes, That's good.
I saw some discussion in our comments about because a lot of these new models, we haven't got to the biggest new range yet, but these Herald models in particular, and a lot of the new character models feel very designed in a good way, like they're mono-pose character models, as GW character models has always been.
Yeah.
But I've seen the argument that they're so characterful now. So I find this funny because they're so characterful that there's not a lot of room to change them. Which is definitely a thing. Definitely a thing when you have, so for example, I've hit this with the rules for slaughter priests in Khorne Army.
Yeah.
They're generic warriors. The sculpts are all very expressive and interesting. But there's specifically a battalion I'd like to do that has 3 of them. So there are 2 sculpts. So which one am I going to pick to try and convert into something else, right? That's definitely a thing. I definitely appreciate that. But this sort of criticism of the new range of GW sculpts seems to rub up against the criticism that the new models don't have the character that the old ones used to. Surely both of those things can't be true.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I did see that. But especially when you're looking at the new Moon Clan Grot model. I mean, it's an extremely characterful model. Stuff like Slimux, which is the Nurgle snail riding gardener warrior thing. Again, I think I like those sculpts and they're great, but I think that it can hinder your storytelling a little bit if there's only one Slimux and he's in your battle, and there's only one Alarielle and she's in your fight, you know what I mean? And you don't always want to be doing the main plot line. You want to be doing your own sort of side plot line.
Like, I think there's an interesting, there's a difference between very characterful sculpts and sculpts that are literally characters.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know why they have done this, but like so there's been a couple of, I think the only new AOS model this month was the new Lord Celestin on foot.
Oh, yes.
Who's the guy with the shield and sword. But his name is Gavriel Shoreheart.
Yes.
And I know it's Gavriel because I keep saying Garviel because of Loken.
Yeah,
from the Horus Heresy, who's is an anagram of a different Warhammer name. And there's, as far as I can tell, no reason he's a named character and not a new kind of Lord Celestin for the Stormcast, right?
Yeah.
And it feels a bit weird to me that that's a named character. It's also weird to me that he looks so much like Meatloaf. But like,
and he's really squat. He's got tiny thighs. It's slightly
like
strange model.
Meatloaf.
Like Meatloaf, yeah. He does look like Meatloaf, actually.
But nonetheless, right, there's a sort of, I don't quite, I definitely don't get, but maybe I sort of stumbled around the subject initially, but I think there's an interesting argument to be made about whether or not everything should be a sort of multi-pose customizable kit and people should be encouraged to kind of come up with their own designs for these characters. Right,
yes.
Or if these sort of even sort of not named kind of generic heroes should be kind of so these sculpts are so detailed that they'd probably be quite difficult to convert, I think is the kind of the flip side of it, right?
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
They're beautifully designed for a particular pose and a particular look. But it's an interesting thought because I think it's sort of interesting. You get a wave. I think this will raise the overall standard of people's character painting in a way and their armies and their stuff, because every individual hero is not just a kind of, I've been thinking of this recently because I've brought a lot of stuff back from my parents' house again over Christmas, but not everything is just sort of a traditional 2D GW model that you have to convert to give it kind of any personality. You're in this territory now where everyone has access to a kind of certain bar of kind of quality when it comes to the miniatures themselves.
Yeah.
And then whether or not you choose to customize is sort of a level beyond that, but is no longer, well, I don't think it's ever mandatory, but it's certainly not now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's very different between 40k and AOS with this as well, where 40k, where people are very obsessed with gear loadouts, it's very much about gearing up your army. Being able to reflect that on the model is very important. And I can understand the criticisms of some of the captain models where you don't have many options, and that's such a big part of the game, but that doesn't necessarily exist in the same way for AOS. You're talking more about how narratively it fits together in your head when you're using these models. And also personalizing those models makes them feel more, in tune with the story you want to tell with them. Is more of a expression thing than it is with 40k's, the complaints with 40k's characters. But still, I mean, there are like there's loads of Moonclan Grot parts. You can make a Moonclan Grot general with the history of GW's sculpts. Like, you can still scratch build stuff. I wonder if they're looking at it and they're thinking we kind of want a lot of our models to have like a lower difficulty barrier. So those monopose models can look great and don't necessarily require as much fiddly gluing and holding in place and pinning and a lot of the stuff that conversion demands. And what do? Do you cater to the people who want to just put the model together, or do you cater to a relatively niche selection of people who want to convert everything and personalize everything? Maybe they're falling down on the kind of more populist side of that.
I think so, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
No.
Maybe I'm becoming a bit of a miniatures populist in that way. But like, I think it's good that the average sort of player who just wants to glue things together and spray it and wash it and dry brush it, has access to expressive sculpts out of the box. And they can offer kind of instructions for multi-pose kits on how to make things look right. I thought it was a good bit in one of the recent White Dwarfs about how to match your torsos and arms to your legs when thinking about poses and how people stand and how people actually move.
That's interesting.
That's all kind of useful stuff and interesting things to sort of teach people, because you do see some weird looking builds sometimes.
Yeah.
But for these characters, I think it's part of the appeal actually, is that you can you have immediate access to a certain degree of detail and quality and everything else, and then obviously painting it is always on the user. But equally, achieving personalization is probably, like, if it's important to you, that option is always there. And if it's not important to you, then the overall quality bar has been raised.
Yeah. I think if you're determined enough, you could still convert those models. Though that Moonclan probably is quite a difficult one to do because all the fungus bits are so interlinked with that form. His form is just part of the same. You can't change that pose really.
I think that's the thing. Like this discussion sprung out of this model particularly, and I am genuinely taking this from a chat that was had in Discord because I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Because it was that sort of thing of like, because it feels like there are two competing schools of criticism of the way GW design miniatures now, given that I feel that GW are miles ahead of everybody else in terms of fantasy miniatures design. there might be some arguments in sci-fi with Infinity, but like it's pretty close either way. But there's sort of there's two arguments. One is that the latest generation of GW minis have ended up kind of sterile in a way that the classic old sort of Citadel sculpts, where you get these, you can literally see the hand of the sculpture in every miniature because there's only one way it can be. It's one piece of metal in one slaughter base, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is fighting against, a kind of modern sterility. And then there's the other side of it, which is that the quality and detail level of the current models is so high that it is diminishing exactly what we were just talking about, that creative side of it that came in order to make interesting things out of the older, much more rudimentary sculpt.
Yeah.
I don't think there's necessarily an answer to that. It's just interesting that these two sort of completely contradictory, contrary views of what GW are doing are kind of emerging at the same time.
I think it might change when we learn what Malign Importance really is.
Yes, true.
Because if they are actual characters that are heads of specific factions and et cetera, and there's part of an overall story, then of course they're going to get their own sculpts, and you wouldn't expect like an Alarielle or something to be especially moddable or posable, or a Slimux or something like that, because they are just big, hero characters. And they're going to look similar in every game, and you wouldn't expect Alarielle could change a bit because she changes her aspect and can kind of alter.
You have to replant her every time. It's like sea monkeys.
Yeah. But you're not going to put her on a dragon, are you? She's always going to be on the Wardroth Beetle. She's always going to be in a similar pose. It's just the concept.
Well, I mean, I guess that brings us so it's sort of, I don't want to spend too much time speculating on it because I imagine next month's podcast, which is incidentally be a little bit sooner than this one was because we're running slightly late with December, will cover what Malign Importance actually is because we'll know by then. But it feels like it's going to be a big deal. And the reason I say that is simply because, they've gone to a greater extent of teasing this than with any previous AOS thing ever.
Yeah, initially I thought it was just going to be a small set of hero releases with some rules around them. And
or a story event or something, like a store event or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. But now having done all this and a lot of the imagery they're using, the kind of death imagery, is really interesting. I mean, is this a death tease? But, if so, what do those other factions have to do with it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
We can get onto this in a minute, but death is definitely the new big thing in AOS. So, the novel that was released on Christmas Day, which I've been, I'm halfway through, is Nagash the Undying King, which is about a, Nurgle invasion of Shyish, the Realm of Death. It's really good. It's really good. The latest wave of AOS novels have been great and really blown open that setting for me.
Oh, awesome.
Really great kind of, and Nagash the Undying King has particularly a kind of really great assessment of what it's like to be a mortal in the Realm of Death and what it's like to be a mortal who worships who worships Nagash. It opens with, Nurgle kind of sieging this city, and there's a last defender who's this sort of female warrior who's kind of holding the gate with her brother, but her brother's a skeleton because her brother died fighting someone else years ago.
Yeah.
And is just and he says stay behind, we've got this. And all the skeletons move out to kind of protect the mortals. And
interesting.
So that's how their society works.
Yeah,
you keep going after you die because they worship Nagash.
Just a new phase of existence.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
It is really cool. So there's all that sort of thing. But a big theme of that is, how Nagash has been changed by being defeated by Archaon.
Oh yeah.
There are shades of video game that we have an on-off relationship with Destiny to what has happened to Nagash in that he's been sort of disproved. If he can be defeated, then death isn't inevitable.
Right.
So he's gone mad. And there's, some really good scenes between, Arkan the Black, the Mortarch of Night, Manfred's the Mortarch of Night, the Mortarch of Sacraments.
Yeah.
He's the guy who kind of has to pretend to like Nagash. Yeah. All of the Mortarchs, including Neferata, are fallen out with Nagash.
He's the most likely to suck up to Nagash, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's the real kind of.
This makes it clear that he's worried.
Oh, right.
Because Nagash shows up basically in the same place every day and says the same thing.
He's broken.
Yes.
He's resetting.
He's losing his memory. He's losing his mind,
right.
Basically.
Huh.
But he's sort of fixated on everything he's owed, and he feels like he's owed the entire universe, basically. So the rumor is that Malign Importance is going to be Nagash's return, but also that means him finally claiming his debts owed from Sigmar.
Yeah. That's exciting.
And they've teased in the latest White Dwarf and elsewhere that this means sort of the final consequence of what it means to be reforged too many times.
Right.
Which is, people are calling it Deathcast, but they think that might be where this is going.
Interesting. So a proper automaton army of like,
Death Stormcast,
Yeah.
basically. But it would be really interesting because it would mean that AOS's version of the Heresy isn't Chaos Stormcast, it's Death Stormcast.
yeah, well, that'd be really, really exciting.
I think that'd be really exciting, and it'd be really interesting redistribution of power between the factions a bit.
Yeah.
'Cause Chaos have had a lot of love for a long time. So if Death ended up as a natural counterpoint to Stormcast specifically,
Yeah, yeah.
then that balances things out a little bit better. And Destruction are just also there.
And it means they can release more Stormcast models, which are probably some of their most popular, and I will buy them.
Well, I was thinking that, like, I know you wanted to do Skeleton Army anyway. So
Yeah,
if Death
definitely.
Stormcast show up, then
Holy moly. That's just too much for me.
yeah.
I mean, I will have a Death Army. I'm going to own a lot of skeletons by the end of the year. I'm just hanging on to see what they do and whether there is a huge, I mean, it feels like there's a huge Death release coming, and what they look like and whether they go down a kind of Spirit Host look. I absolutely love the kind of in-between look of the Herald of Nagash, the way he's kind of part spirit, but is also a kind of chainmailed figure. Like there's that, he still has the accoutrements of his former life, even though he's a spirit, and that's kind of the
He's wearing a hat, is what you mean.
so wearing a hat is what I mean. But, you know, ghosts don't tend to wear hats, and
That's true.
it says something about a person. And so the thing I never quite liked about the Spirit Host is they're just a bit kind of anonymous, and it's just like a horde army. You don't really get a sense that they're people. Whereas what I love about the Shadespire skeletons is that they have loads of personality, and they manage to,
Somehow have most personality of any of the war.
yeah, somehow. I don't know how they do it, but they're just like so kind of cheesy and brilliant. So that is what I would want.
Yeah, and it's kind of exciting. I would love to see what they do with that sculpt wise, and it's a cool twist story wise for us as well, potentially.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I'll tell you this, right? If they do this, if Death Stormcast are a thing, your general should still be Tantris.
Yeah, just
He should actually
change,
finally
just different.
we'll play one last game. I'll kill him again.
Yeah.
Like,
One more time for the road.
and then we can, that'd be an interesting new phase. So the thing that's, the other side to this, so the thing that's coming out ahead of this is the new Nurgle wave, which we don't have to dwell too much on because, it's been expected for a long time. And I think there's a rumor that it was delayed.
Right.
Because, do you remember that the Blight War box
Yeah.
came out in August
That makes sense.
included the Nurgle allegiance ability?
Yeah, but then was never followed up on.
Yeah. And now finally the book is coming out. Maggot Kin of Nurgle.
There's some amazing names for the new
There is.
Nurgle characters.
I was actually almost going to open this pod by saying, and a very sloppity bile piper to you.
Sloppity Bagpiper.
Sloppity bile piper.
Bile Piper.
Or as someone in Discord said, Sloppity Billy Piper.
Sloppity Bile Piper is like the equivalent of a Nurgle musician, isn't he? He plays his...
He's a herald. He's one of the heralds.
Right.
So there are a bunch of new heralds of Nurgle, including the previous plastic herald of Nurgle. And now there is the, Sloppity Bile Piper and something like the Smallpox Scrivener.
Yeah. I love Sloppity Bile Piper. What if Dr. Duke's got very, very ill and swapped out his horn for some sort of sack of mucus that he blows into?
I think I said this when we were talking about Discord, but like, I love that doing the realistic Foley work for an actual audiobook based in the Age of Sigmar universe would be really ridiculous.
Yeah.
'Cause it's just bagpipes and tooting horns and skull drums
Yeah.
all day.
Love it.
I think, the new Nurgle stuff, so it is basically to Nurgle what happened to Tzeentch last January.
Yeah.
So, new Great and Clean one, which is a really great model. Beasts of Nurgle now have a plastic sculpt. A lot of this is also crossed over to 40k. Bunch of new heralds, including Sloppity Bile Piper and I love that the Sloppity Bile Piper is the happy one.
You're right. Yeah.
And then
The Scrivener is the...
Scrivener is the dour one with a long scroll full of like corrections. And his mouth is a tube that comes out of his face and wraps around his arse and then comes back out again.
And it's enormous and screaming.
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
It's just, he's an internet commentator.
It is,
Big
yeah.
form, yeah.
The rando. And, I think you'll find, you should just write that every
Yeah.
line on his scroll should be, I think you'll find.
Yeah, rules objections.
And what else is there? So there's a new Blight King hero.
Yeah.
And Blight Kings on drones.
Yeah. Those
Which
are
just feel like Nurgle Skyfires, basically.
Yeah. One of them is holding a corpse out and the corpse is being sick. It's a bit gross. Not
It's
sure about
too
that
many
one.
ideas at the same time.
Yeah, it's a bit
I
weird.
think that's the thing that keeps me from collecting Nurgle, actually. It is a bit grim.
Yeah, it
Like
is.
I have, get mild, trypophobia. Like,
Yeah, definitely don't collect Nurgle then. That's the worst thing you can
I feel like dry brushing it would make me physically ill.
do. Yeah, for sure.
Cause that's what gets me about trypophobia is the idea of touching anything like
Right.
circular and, that fear of like pock marks and craters and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all
grim.
it's all
I'm going
that
to stick
stuff.
to it, yeah.
I like that they've redone the Great Unclean one. I think he's a fairly pricey model, which suggests he's going to be enormous, which is
It's the same price as the other Greater Demons.
Oh, really? So it's probably
80.
I'm glad they've stuck with the kind of grinning turd aesthetic of the Great Unclean one and haven't tried to kind of.
It's a happy poo.
It's a giant happy poo with a sword, and it's coming for you. That is Nurgle to me. This big smiling Great Unclean one is what Nurgle is supposed to be.
Just a big old turd
Disgusting.
emoji.
It's like, I want to feel offended when someone puts a Nurgle army down in front of me, just disgusted that they would even kind of like do this to me.
It does look massive. Like,
Yeah,
to
it's
scale with the other
huge.
models, it's...
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to playing against them. I have no desire whatsoever to have a Nurgle army, but they're going to have some interesting rules.
I'd like to eventually build towards the kind of Chaos Undivided thing in AOS,
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's a long time off. That might even be more than a year off. And I think Nurgle will probably be the one I got around to last. The only reason it wouldn't be last is if they don't refresh Slanesh.
Right.
So
Yeah, damn. Don't want to build that chariot. My favourite model of the range is probably the Blight King on foot. He's the guy with the big shield and,
that's cool.
He's a generally cool looking warrior with like hints of Nurgle. He's unmistakably Nurgle, but isn't just a total gross out fucking mess of teeth and eyes.
Yeah, and they feature really heavily in a lot of the books lately as well. Like
cool.
the Blight Kings. And something I really like about Nurgle, and it comes across in these models, and it's included in things like the Sloppity Bar Piper, is that, like, Nurgle is like fundamentally the most reasonable god. Like, but in a like, obviously no chaos god is good, right? That's not to say that they're reasonable in the sense that, you know, just leave them be. It's like, Nurgle is the sort of like fatal centrist of chaos gods. He's the sort of like, just give up, it'll be fine.
Right.
Like, it's fine. Just, this is fine. You have typhus now, but you're fine. Like, oh, your arm fell off? That's a shame, but don't worry, smile about it. Like, his knights are all really chill.
Right.
Like, even when they're invading the realm of death, they're pretty chill. They forgive each other for mistakes because nothing really fucking matters.
Everyone's going to rot in the end.
Yeah, exactly. So, they are like kind of, I like that there's that sort of attitude and like, you know, the Khorne guys are furious all the time.
Yeah.
Tzeentch is sort of always plotting and scheming and ambitious. Slanesh is, sort of, rampantly hedonistic, and Nurgle is just sort of like happy and fat and sick.
It's really, really.
Which is it's a perfect choice for Christmas.
Yeah, it's true, actually. They've got a giant evil tree as well. Did you see
That's
that one?
true, that got announced today, didn't it?
I like their giant evil tree. That's an interesting idea for I don't know what the hell it does, but.
They didn't say much about the rules today, but it's, what's it called? It's called a feculent gnarlmaw.
Of course it is. Imagine that famous Five novel.
Yeah. Five and the feculent gnarlmaw.
Yeah. The Harry Potter novel.
Well, yeah, so it's a terrain piece that will have special effects for Nurgle, but, apparently in his new rules, oh god, I can't fit that many Nurgle names in my head at the same time. Snail riding Horticulus Slimax
Horticulus Slimax.
is getting new rules where he can spawn them.
Oh,
like,
plant them.
yeah,
That's cool.
like, Wildwoods,
Ah,
which is interesting.
that's cool. Because Nurgle is such a natural opposition to Sylvaneth anyway.
Yeah, and that would be kind of amazing if you can plant them to stop Wildwoods coming out.
Or if they just eat wildwoods. Yeah, good.
Good. Yeah, so that's the Nurgle stuff. That's fun. Like, yeah, like I say, not gonna drag me in yet. And to be honest, I'm pretty convinced that nothing's gonna drag me away from my shame pile.
Yeah, same.
I say that now, but I really want to get through it.
Yeah, I think we both had quite busy Christmases, so there hasn't been a huge amount of hobby happening this month.
But it does link to, I will, however, buy the Chaos Demons Codex, which is coming out this month for 40k.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because that's been quite unpleasant that I just have a kind of out of the box 40k army in my demons.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, not much to say about that other than that's happening. And it's, the rules seem cool and we can talk about it. We played a game of 40k this afternoon, so we can talk about how demons feel different. Because they are very different.
They are very different.
The only other thing I wanted to bring up news-wise was, it was a couple of weeks ago now, but Games Workshop announced that they were going to do errata differently for 40k. And this, I thought was great, the way they've laid this out. And it's sort of answered, I thought they've been doing, FAQs and rules changes pretty well anyway. And they had been doing it reasonably well at a time when I was very frustrated with how Fantasy Flight were handling it for X-Wing. So, them sort of doubling down and kind of trying to codify this stuff has been very welcome. So what they've said is that there will be 2 FAQs a year for Warhammer 40,000 in May and September, I think.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a chapter approved, which is the 40k version of the General's Handbook once a year. And then after any given codex comes out, there is a sort of a window of a couple of weeks for an errata to come out. And I think that's just to protect themselves against,
unforeseen exploits.
Yeah, or typos, literal, like, oh, we printed a 6 when we meant a 5 kind of typos, which could happen hypothetically. And then they're also releasing rules in beta form for people to test. So, new rules for targeting characters to close down exploits and smite, the spell that does mortal wounds that is popular when spammed, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I thought it was worth highlighting because I think it's nice that they have not only been very responsive with this stuff all year, but now they're kind of figuring out how to codify that in a way that hopefully doesn't upset people who do get upset when rules changes just suddenly arrive.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's become an event now, twice like, if Fantasy Flight had announced a year ago, Hero, when our FAQs come out, and they always come out at this time, I might not have lost faith in the way that I did. And this month, one of the things that's happened to me this month hobby-wise is I went to a couple of X-Wing events. I won one of them, which was nice.
Oh.
And I started to enjoy myself again with the game and sort of approach it in a new way. And I've kind of made my peace with it. And I've sort of, I'm enjoying the new wave of ships, and the meta is healthier. There are huge problems still, but it's better.
Yeah.
And so it's been nice to move back into it, but it definitely feels like, in a way that it probably shouldn't, like a process of healing after feeling really disillusioned with something. And that disillusionment would have been less pronounced had I had something like this, like a really clear plan for what happens with the game competitively. And I don't play 40k competitively, so this is very unlikely to affect me, but I just thought it was a really nice way of being open with the community.
Yeah, it's interesting to see a war game moving closer to our field of video games in the way that ongoing development happens. And beta testing is obviously, there's no substitute for putting out a rule set and then reading a load of forums when people report back, or talk about amongst themselves, talk to each other about it. That's like a honest feedback to each other, and that you can pick and choose which bits you think are actually viable or worth changing.
Yeah, I just think it's a really good.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a good change. Made me think, like, Malign Importance, one of the rumors is that this might lead to a rule shakeup for AOS. Like, we're heading to AOS 2nd edition this year, which would be great.
Yeah.
I was going to ask as a sort of quick fire question, if you could, what would your AOS 2nd edition change be?
Oh gosh, that's a good one.
Because honestly, and I'll say this to make things easier, like, a lot of mine I've realized are just importing things from 40k 8th.
Right. Would you import character protection?
I would import not being able to shoot if you're in combat.
Yeah, that's probably one of the ones I think about the most. Obviously everything would have to be repointed completely because, the damage output is calculated based on a round of combat and a round of shooting.
Yeah.
But of course that would come with a General's Handbook or with a new edition. So that's an interesting one. It would change the game massively. And you'd have to put a lot of units in the bin, I think, probably if you did that. I think it's interesting because, like, I think that's a reasonable change and quite a simple change. I think AOS still has to keep the rule set simple. I think that's the kind of alternative sell it has versus 40k. And 40k isn't too complicated these days, but it is a more complicated game. It's a more, gritty game. And AOS is the kind of fun, roll lots of dice. You don't have to, in close combat, assign individual attacks to individual models, that kind of stuff. It's just roll and enjoy it. And to that extent, like, stuff being able to shoot in combat, means you don't have to define what is or isn't in combat. Is the stray unit out the back able to shoot, but the rest of the unit in,
that's true.
Able to shoot? It raises some edge cases. I wonder, like, how it would change the game. I wonder if shooting, is it overpowered? I think it's overpowered. It feels bad when it's a massive army designed to shoot stuff. But I think that the units that tend to shoot, unless they're Skyfires, don't tend to be, like, very mobile capture units, and AOS is such a game about capturing points and delivering strength at the right places. I'm not sure that the shooting is that bad in the game.
No, I kind of agree. I think it's more about the strategic space that opens up. Like, I think a repointing is correct. But it's something that struck me today playing 40k. And we can get to this when we talk about the game we played, but that I sort of forgot to tie up your units in combat to stop them from shooting, because I didn't realize that's the thing you can do, even though it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's more that it follows logically. I think that's the thing. In terms of simplifying the game, I find the fact that you can fire a longbow at the person who's an inch from you unintuitive in AOS. And I think the longer I played it, I think that's one of the things, like, I'd love to see AOS stay simple, but adopt some of the things that 40k 8th has done to kind of so, you know, something they changed in 40k is like vehicle facing, because that sort of gets pedantic and kind of, difficult to manage. But some element of facing or kind of positional stuff being kind of useful gives you a sense of the physicality of the units, I think. Like this comes across a lot in X-Wing, where firing arcs are a huge thing.
Yeah.
And something about the fact that a ranged attack in Age of Sigmar as it currently exists is simply usually an 18 or 24 inch bubble around the unit where you can fire 360 degrees under any circumstances at any time. And the cover rules are quite restrictive in terms of what does and doesn't count as cover. So firing a kind of arrow back over your head while you're fighting somebody else is not impossible. In fact, it's completely allowed by the rules.
Yeah.
And I think that weakens the sense of what's actually going on a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that you move fully back to ranks of archers standing behind, but that, you know, the rules loosen up or like specify a little bit better, like how things fit together. Like, you know, imagine Vanguard Hunters should be able to shoot into combat.
Right, because they've got the pistols rule, right? From 40k.
It's basically the pistols rule, but you probably make it specials then because pistols aren't really a thing in AOS.
Yeah.
And suddenly their 12-inch ranged attack isn't a sort of icing on a kind of weird cake. It's like, oh, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
And they're points according, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely, I wouldn't instantly hate that idea. And it is weird. It does create like weird mental images, doesn't it, when you actually, you are fighting. I think a lot of the rules I would change would be like fairly small stuff. Like I'd definitely change the cover rules. It's very hard to do, but currently in Age of Sigmar, you have to be completely within the cover object to actually get your cover bonus. And the objects just the trainer designed mostly doesn't allow for that. The Wildwoods do. That's just like a patch of ground that you can stand inside. But a lot of the stuff they've got is just walls, and walls don't offer cover because you can't be inside them completely. You know what I mean? Like that stuff just doesn't, like maybe within 3 inches of an object, that kind of thing. I mean, something.
I think it's just a tidying up of those things.
Yeah,
I think cause when I was thinking about this, like I was thinking about what I would say to this question. My first guess was I would say remove battle line as a concept.
Right.
And the reason for that is I think army building in AOS is too restrictive and the concept of battle line is too restrictive. I think 40k has done this well, where there are different types of detachments that have different requirements. So sometimes you need 3 elites in a HQ, sometimes you need 3 troops in an HQ, and you can mix that up. AOS can't do that because AOS doesn't have the same concept of troop types. It doesn't have troops, elite, fast attack, heavy assault, heavy support, that kind of thing. Heavy support? That's probably what I mean. It just has units and heroes. And some of those units are designated as battle line. And I find that concept is sort of, I think that it's fraying at the edges. And it's one of the ways in which, factions that haven't had rules updates in a long time suffer the most. And I think ultimately that's limiting because the point of battle line is that, you have to have some troops, right? You can't just have
that's the intention of the rule,
units.
isn't it? Yeah.
But most armies have loads of troops units. So at the moment, the rules don't account for like, what if I wanted to do a Pestilence and Molder army where I have the troops choices of both of those things, but I don't want clan rats. You can't do that. The reason I didn't say that though, having just said it, was that is something that I think we have learned you can be more flexible with the people you're playing with. Like battle line restrictions strictly only apply to match play. One of the effects of them releasing match play last year was that suddenly everyone feels like match play has to happen. Like points have to happen. You know, proper army construction has to be done for the game to work, but actually it doesn't. And a lot of the best games we've played, we've sort of soft ignored those kinds of restrictions on battle line and hero limits and things like that.
It feels like it's there to counter hardcore list builders, but it might actually have too much of a detrimental effect on, you know, the general game.
I think new 40k has done a better job of achieving that while not pushing kind of people who want to play more casually into this place where they have to kind of seem to actively reject the rules everyone else accepts. Like the fact that the Battleforged, there's multiple different ways of creating a legal army depending on what type of troop you have the most of. So 3 elites is viable. It's just a different kind of detachment.
Yeah.
With fewer command point bonuses. That's a really nice system. The fact that power level exists. Like actually maybe that's it. Maybe I would just love power level to come to AOS as a concept.
Yeah.
Because I think it does, I was skeptical about whether or not communities would take up power level as a concept over points, given that it's more inexact. Recently, I went to play some Shadespire at a club in Bristol, which was really friendly and really lovely. And they have admittedly, it is their 40k kind of fun nights side, not their hardcore stuff, but they have wholesale adopted power level.
Oh, right. Interesting.
Which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like we play 40 power level games on a Wednesday night. And that I find very, what's the word? Like, encouraging. Because it means that these kind of less hardcore, less granular systems are finding uptake by people who honestly don't want to bother with the tiny peculiarities of points and army building restrictions and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't try and power game it within that system, but I presume you'd get a bad rep and people want to play with you. So,
yeah. I'm trying to think of what would happen to AOS armies if you took the battle line out. I mean, you're right in saying that it's there to make sure you have units on the board and not just, I have 20 Kynoth Hunters and a Branch Witch, and that is an army, and Kynoth Hunters are really good. So that they want you to have Dryads in there, they want you to have Tree Revenants and actual units, so it actually looks like an army on the tabletop. And to counter the stuff that used to happen when people used to put down Nagash and then put down Mortarks, and there wouldn't be any skeletons or zombies or anything else, it would just be like 7 models, and it would fight 8 other models on the other side from someone who would equally eat.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, this is the thing, right? This is the reason that I don't think it necessarily needs to change, because it's more that our sense of how it works. Because like, as soon as match play was a thing, and it was a thing for as long as we've been playing AOS, we felt the need to do that, right? We tended to play match play scenarios. We tended to build to a points value.
Yeah.
And it feels like the presence of a sort of official mode has a gravitational pull. Like, open play and narrative play are there. None of these problems exist in those modes. Now, match play is explicitly there to protect tournaments from exactly the scenario you're describing.
Yeah.
And what I find really fascinating about this is that I think over the course of the games we played over the last year, we have gotten more comfortable saying we kind of want to play this like open play or narrative play, where we don't worry quite so much about, we'll use points values to kind of get an approximately even game, but we won't worry so much about army composition, but because we trust that neither of us are going to be dicks about it, right? Like, we're going to, we relax the rules, but you haven't shown up having just bought another 4 boxes of Retributors, right?
No.
Like, because what's the point in power gaming when you're playing a narrative campaign with your friend, right? Like, that kind of thing. So all that stuff is absolutely there, but what I find fascinating about it is that it feels like sort of tournament ways to play, matched play ways to play dominate the conversation so much that almost the health of the game is judged against them exclusively. Whereas actually the health of the game is whether or not people are having fun playing it and can find space within the rules to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Which you absolutely can through, whether that's through open play or the open war cards or skirmish or Path to Glory or whatever other form it takes. So the game's actually pretty healthy in that regard. And that's why, it sounds like a funny thing to say, why I didn't bring that up as the thing I would change about the game, because it feels like that's there. It just means that there's sort of some slow perception shift that needs to take place away from perfect balance and kind of mechanical purity towards not being a dick about the rules.
Yeah. That'd be an interesting change. I think I'd like to see a better magic system, like a kind of revamped from the ground up, redesigned magic system.
Yeah.
And in my head, it would look something more like the card game that used to happen in old edition Warhammer, but that's just because what I know, and that's where my mind might go straight to. But, even stuff like, so in, the Horus Heresy box game we've been playing,
Burning Prospero.
I love that system of, people drawing cards against each other to have a kind of psychic fight across the battlefield, and something like that, something quite tactile and interactive. And maybe like, not necessarily bringing templates back, but having a kind of spatial effect to spells. Maybe that starts overcomplicating things again, and that's always the risk with AOS if you want to keep it like touch. But these are the things I want spells to do. I want them to kind of to affect areas of the battlefield. And
I'd like it to be something that almost every, I think this is something 40k hasn't solved either, really.
Yeah.
Like the psychic phase in 40k belongs to whoever has more of them.
Yeah. And it's just a dice off as well, which is, interesting to an extent, but it could be so much better.
I feel like the magic phase, or the hero phase, sorry, in AOS, because it's the hero phase, because it's explicitly like this is when the heroes do stuff. It feels like it should be kind of, more interactive, basically. And I think that means unifying like prayers and spells into the same system.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Because that's a weakness, right?
It's weird, isn't it?
Like,
Yeah.
it's weird that people say Stormcast don't have magic. They totally do. They just rolled 1d6. It's weird they say Khorne doesn't have magic because it has prayers instead.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like those systems should talk to each other. Like, there should be some meaningful difference, right? Like, there should be something about what it means to cast a spell rather than a prayer that is rules different, but they shouldn't be completely separate systems.
Yeah.
Like, that would, I think, help it feel more interactive because it means you have stuff to do. Even if it was like, you know, characters, like, I don't know if it'd be overpowered to say them, and it would probably require a rewriting a lot of the rules, but like, to give heroes a chance to resist spells if they can roll 2d6 and beat their own leadership value.
Some spells are like that, aren't they? But, at least then the other person's rolling and, you know.
That actually, I just realized that make cowardly heroes better resisting spells. Doesn't make any sense. But you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Like,
yeah,
some sort of like giving heroes some sort of save against spells. So if I cast a Bolt of Tzeentch at your hero, you have something you can do about it after I've rolled my mortal wounds.
Well, this kind of taps into another problem I think I have with the game, which is just mortal wounds as a concept. And I don't mind, not as a concept. I don't mind mortal wounds as an idea, but I find that the way a lot of armies work is essentially just too mortal wounds heavy. And the things about mortal wounds is just, it's automatic and the other person again is not interacting with it. And often it's just like you get a unit to some place and it sets off its bomb and then,
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute.
and then, you roll, one person gets to roll loads of dice and the other person has to sit there and just take it. And I think there must be a better way of creating those
and
ideas.
then maybe that is something more equivalent to invulnerable saves. Cause like, I suppose one thing we have is we don't tend to run a lot of units that have mortal wound saves, which do exist in AOS.
Yeah, it seems like there's maybe it's just the games we've played, but it seems like there's such an imbalance. Like mortal wounds are almost so important.
I tell you what, a really interesting change would be. So we're basically, what we're doing now is sitting down to redesign AOS. But so imagine we had our unified magic system change. Imagine if Mystic Shield was something that was kind of available to everybody, like either in prayer form or in magic form. But even so, if Mystic Shield was not +1 save.
Like a mortal wound save.
Yeah, but it was like a 5-foot mortal wound save.
Right. That could be interesting.
Once a turn, one unit.
Yeah.
Casts on a 5 or a 6. Like, that would be interesting.
Because there's interesting decisions to be made there. Because you're seeing the Retributors come in one way and you're seeing the Fulminators come in another way. And you're saying, well, what do I want to protect? You know, what,
Yeah, like, I don't mind interactive if interactive was a turn ago and it was me prepping against this.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
cause the game already has that with Inspiring Presence, which is the thing you use to protect your hordes from battle shock.
Yes,
You're like,
yeah.
which, if I have 2 big blocks of troops, which one is he going to go for? Like, I'll steer him into one by Inspiring Presencing the other. Like, those are all choices. It's just that doesn't exist for Mortal Wound spam
Right.
at the scale that it exists in the game.
Yeah. Is that, cause I bought the Sylvaneth Battle Tome thinking that, because they are quite a technical glass cannon army with lots of interesting movement abilities and they can plant woods and teleport between them and stuff like that. Well, I actually looked at their damage output. The way they actually do the damage is massively mortal wounds based. All the stuff the Kurnoth Hunters really do. They've got very good weapons, but they're doing automatic mortal wounds all the time. And I think mortal wound spam is a negative player experience, just fundamentally.
I think so. Automatic damage is a negative player experience.
Yeah.
This was the exact thing that X-Wing suffered for a long time. It still does. Automatic damage, particularly when players don't have a chance to respond to it,
It's a bad feeling.
It's a bad feeling, and it puts too much emphasis on the defender to play perfectly to avoid it. Which is actually more possible in X-Wing than it is in AOS, because AOS everything is a bubble, and it's hard to avoid a bubble, right? Like, particularly when, they're big, right? You're talking about 36-inch spheres around a unit.
Yeah, and for me, a mortal wound attack doesn't have any character to it. I mean, this sounds weird, but if you've got, so the Kurnoth Hunters have their scythes. The scythes are some of the, best weapons in the game. They're slightly dicey, They've got that D3 damage. You don't quite know what's going to happen with them, really. You could have a duff turn with them, and you have to bear that in mind. There are interesting variables to that. Whereas a thing that just walks somewhere and then rolls a load of dice and does automatic damage isn't even a good experience.
Yeah, I've always found that about the Start Soul Maces. Like,
Right.
I can't imagine, I can't imagine what they do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's just, you roll 2 dice and then it's just sort of automatic. I mean, the descriptions say that they just basically explode. They're just like grenades on a stick. and
Right.
just lightning just goes.
Like, I can imagine a lot of the spells better. Like, I can imagine even Bolt of Tzeentch, right? Like, I can imagine a Bolt of Change Magic consuming somebody.
Yeah.
And it doing, 5 mortal wounds. Okay, right, you've been really fucked up by it. Where the kind of D6 roll is sort of like the magnitude of like, we won't go deep on the skirmish game we played today, but I got my, D6 mortal wound blood boil spell off at my Slaughter Priest on your Branch Witch, and I only did 2 mortal wounds, and that to me says, oh, it's interesting. We can get something fluffy out of that because it's like, he's boiling her blood, but she's a tree. It doesn't work. Like, whereas maybe she catches light if I roll a 6, right? Like, you can sort of, with those kinds of spells, or with the Gaunt Summoners rolling a dice for every model, you can't do anything about it, but it's a roll dice for every model and every 4 up is a mortal wound. I can imagine the sheet of flame and the entire horde catching fire and seeing how many people survive, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when it's like melee weapons that do mortal wounds on a 6, I find it a bit harder to, actually even that I can maybe imagine. Maybe it's just Starsoul Maces. Maybe it's just the fact that you don't roll anything else. It's just,
It just happens, right? Yeah.
I feel like as soon as your entire weapon profile, hit, wound, all the rest of it is just replaced with roll this, that's too
far. Yeah.
Yeah, that's too far. It's like you should have 2 things at least.
Yeah. I guess we're playing 2 armies that are quite mortal wound specialized.
That's true.
But the Silver Death seems to be as well, and maybe other factions aren't, but surely everyone's looking to get those mortal wounds into their army. It feels like there's a bit too much of it in the game. And as I say, I'm not averse to it necessarily as fundamentally some mortal wound stuff, but it feels like it's all throughout the game is basically it's your main damage dealing. The way you really deal damage is through mortal wound output for a lot of armies.
Yeah.
So I'd change that.
Yes, that's reasonable. We'll find out what Malign Portents actually is.
Yeah.
Like 4 days.
If you're playing AOS and you have any thoughts, or disagree with this, which I'm sure everyone does, then send us an email actually.
It'd be interesting to hear what people think.
Yeah.
Because, like, and a lot of this stuff is about, like, it's just about having more good interactive moments. I think.
But without overcomplicating, that seems to be the difficulty with AOS, isn't it?
We'll get into this later when we talk about 40k, but like, we played a game where, so all Tzeentch demons in 40k have a 4-up invulnerable save, which sounds completely mad, right? But it didn't.
No, it's fine. But everything's designed to stick around longer in 40k, it seems to me, like than in AOS, where there's a lot more damage flying around, everyone's shooting everyone. I mean, everyone's shooting everyone in 40k as well, but, everyone can get shot at any time in combat or anywhere else in AOS. It just feels like it's a differently paced game.
True. But like, it felt like, but that slower pace might suit AOS. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I'd love to playtest some, maybe we should playtest that sometime.
Yeah. We'll just quietly redesign it. No matter what.
We're playing our own edition now.
Yeah. So we should talk about, we're obviously going to have so it's been Christmas. We've been super busy. I think both been super busy with work and
we've been away as well,
and Christmas travel and other things, which means that this hasn't been a tremendously busy hobby month for either of us.
Maybe it should be more like what did you get for Christmas section?
Well, so I got the Shadespire skeletons.
Hey.
So they are in their box.
Lovely. I love them.
Yeah. How about you?
I got a bunch of AOS scenery. I own every piece of AOS scenery now. So I got an Ophidian Archway, I believe it's called, which is enormous, and I built that, and I was really worried about building it because my friend Chimp built one, and it's just the biggest nightmare ever. Apparently, the plastic the reason why they're not cheap, but compared to the size of the thing compared to, a unit, it's relatively cost effective for Games Workshop. And the reason is it's a different type of plastic. It's a different type of cast. And that means that you can get kind of wrong ones that don't fit together very well. So be prepared to go in with some green stuff and be prepared to go in and be very, very careful about gluing these AOS terrain bits together. Having said that, I absolutely love the way they look. I absolutely love how over the top they are and how they've just beautiful ornate carvings in them and stuff like that. It's been an absolute joy to paint, and it's going to look amazing when it goes down on the table. And the Ophidian Archway is kind of massive. And so I was there, for like 3 hours yesterday, very carefully gluing it, and it's basically doesn't need much green stuff at all. It's come out beautifully. And now, I've got another massive terrain piece. Also got some Baleful Realm Gates, which are very good fun because their rules allow you to teleport or try to teleport units between them if you have 2 of them on the battlefield.
So can I tell you something really broken that you won't let me do? Because that would be me fucking up the kind of don't be a dick rule.
Go for it.
If I stand the Gaunt Summoner next to one, I can bring any demon unit I want. through it every
What the
turn.
fuck? What, like a Lord of Change?
Yeah, every turn.
There must be some summoning summoning points will.
Yeah, it's something, I guess, but it doesn't count as summoning because it just happens.
Oh, shit.
If the Gaunt Summoner is if he's within 9 inches of a realm gate,
Yeah.
a demon comes out of it.
You should just bring out like infinite pink horrors. Just win.
How do you
pink
do that?
horrors. That's true, but more pink horrors.
Yeah, exactly. I won't actually do that. I mean, that is probably the reason all this match play stuff that we've been talking about came into AOS.
Right,
because
yeah.
people were just doing that.
Necessary to an extent.
But
Yeah.
that's why that is the Gaunt Summoner special ability that I've never used, is if he's standing next to a realm gate.
Just bring anything through.
Yep.
Come on in. I like the idea that if you try to teleport units between realm gates, there's a chance that they can just be lost or die, and a bunch of them can. So it's an interesting kind of risk reward, and you can build some fun scenarios around that rule as well. So yeah, they're going to be fun to paint up. So I've got those. I've got what's the wizard's ball thing?
The Numinous Oculum.
Oculum. I've got that, and I've got a Bloodnado, which Games Workshop do not sell. Well, they sell in pieces. You have to assemble it yourself.
Cool.
Various kits. What else did I get? I got some Spiked Revenants.
Oh, cool. More Sylvaneth.
Yeah, more Sylvaneth, and you just get 5 in a box, but, and they're really cool models. They're basically just all the Wood Elves, from previous editions have fused into the trees now over the aeons that have passed. And, these particular ones have gone mad, and, they're really sadistic. They like to torture their prey, and they come out and they do loads of interesting rule stuff, which is one of the reasons why I asked for them. Cause, they're one of the few kind of units that debuff bravery in Age of Sigmar.
Oh, cool.
And stuff that they're near, like scenery they're near, becomes haunted and just freaks people out. Really nice, really cool rules. So I look at the way I'm building like, the Future Force for AOS is not to put like really efficient stuff in, like not to put really deadly stuff in, but to put stuff that has the most interesting rules in, stuff that can make things happen in the game. And that's kind of an interesting way to build an army, not like, oh, how can I make this the most effective? But actually, how can I make this the most interesting and have weird new effects happening that we've not seen in the game before? So that they'll certainly help with that. So yep, that's going to be my painting for the next few months. I'm going to paint all my Sylvaneth up. I've been working on my Dryads. Got my colour scheme down.
They seem fun to do.
They are really fun because they're so forgiving, and you can just keep on putting detail onto them as much as you like, and they keep on looking better, even though they didn't look bad in the first place once you dry brush them. And which is like the ideal beginner army, really. If you want to just run loads and loads of Dryads, that's a great kit. Really good price for it as well. I think it's like 20 odd quid, and you get like 16 models or something, and they're big, sizable, fun models to paint, and you can go to town with the detail if you want to. So yeah, I'm loving my Sylvaneth, and I'm working my way through my Colonel Hunters as well, which are quite hard to paint actually.
So at the beginning of the month, I started on Project Zangor, which is the next phase for my Tzeentch army, which when that campaign resumes, I'll be with that.
So they're mortals, right?
Yes. This is the mortal thing. Given that a Slaves to Darkness refresh isn't completely unlikely at the moment. So I started off, but I'm taking my time with them, by which I mean I've built 5. And that's partly because this is what I did, and I got hugely distracted by other things, but I'm taking time converting, like I'm spending time on them. So I've been really impressed by the kit.
Oh, cool.
Like the Sangor kit is fucking great. Like, and I bought 3 boxes of them because I'm going to do 30.
Yeah, wow, awesome.
And it's going to take a long time.
Oh my god, that's going to be really fun.
It's a big project, but like, I think that'd be really fun because you haven't fought me with an army where you have to avoid the death ball. And like with the new rules for like, horde point values, I did some test rolls because I'm a nerd, and I think reasonably a block of 30 Zangor can fight 20 prosecutors despite costing half as many points.
Nice.
Like, and that feels like that'll make, and again, it's the same sort of thought process. I think that'll bring something interesting to our games. I think me having a melee thing that you can't ignore.
Yeah, I've never really had to face that.
And like, that can take, Stormcast on toe to toe is going to be really interesting. But I want to make them look good. So I also want to paint them relatively quickly, but not so I'm going to change some things about how I do Tzeentch. I'm taking this as an opportunity. I'm taking the gap between our campaigns as an opportunity to change up our color schemes and things. But I also wanted to do some conversions. So, because I want to do things, not like power game things, but like it makes sense when, you have like a champion. So there's not, in AOS rules, you have like, champions and standard bearers and musicians. You also have special weapons.
Yeah.
It often makes sense for your champion to be carrying one of the special weapons, like the Judicator with the shockbolt bow, that kind of thing. So I wanted my, Zangor champion to be holding a double-handed weapon. But the double-handed weapons in the sculpts are relatively static. Like there's 2 of them. There's a double-handed axe and a double-handed sword. And they're both specific arms because of the way they're held. So they kind of look similar. And I wanted to make it clear this guy's the champion. So I've done a bunch of conversion work that I'm still working through. I probably won't put any pictures with the post because I need to do some green stuff and the rest of it. Using bits from the, Skyfire kit. Because I'm going to build all of my Skyfires as Skyfires with the Enlightened pieces left over. But one thing that's really cool that I didn't know they'd done is the Zangor pieces across both of the kits, the Zangor kit and the Enlightened / Skyfire kit, are completely cross-compatible.
Oh, cool.
They're all the same scale. The Zangor are actually the same size, just some of them stand on discs and the others don't.
Yeah.
Which means that you can move some other stuff across. So I've taken like this head with a really cool crown of feathers and like a mohawk because it's Zangor stuff and put that on one of the on foot Zangor to make it more clear that he's the champion. Used the arms and haft of the axe, but taken one of the Zangor Enlightened spearheads that looks like a flame, and green stuffed that, pinned it and then green stuffed the gap to kind of create so my champion is now carrying a spear and pointing it forward in kind of an aggressive way, which is going to look really cool when he's in the front of the unit, I think.
Cool.
And I'm going to do the spear tip because it looks like a flame and like a kind of green flame effect,
nice.
which kind of brings him back into
Ties him in with the demons.
and everything else that's happened in the army. So,
Yeah.
and then I'm doing, the other type of special Zangor is a Zangor mutant, which is weird because they're already mutants. They're basically double mutants at this point.
Yeah.
And there's various rules. The Zangor special unit, special character, and special weapon rules are too complicated. Like, I had to do a spreadsheet. And at the point where you have to do a spreadsheet to figure out, because unlike, you don't pick a loadout for the unit. You pick a loadout per model with certain proportions, and when you figure it out, it's not that complicated. But it's too complicated for what it is. But it means that all of the guys I have who are dual wielding need to be mutants in some way. And the mutant kind of piece they give you in the kit is a Zangor whose head is splitting in half into like two screaming halves.
Nice.
It's a great piece, but I don't want all 8 of, hang on, how many are I running? 6. All 6 of the mutants to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I also wanted, like, for various reasons, I wanted the Hornblower to be a mutant because it ties him into the other 3 layered rules that goes into. The kit is a little bit, the rules are mad. But, so what I've done is taken pieces from the Pink Horror kit, and kind of tied them in. So I'm giving extra arms and things to Zangor to kind of tie them in. But also a lot of the Pink Horror hands are the hands that are on fire. So I'm doing that. So like certain of the Zangor have like flaming hands and things, which is going to make them, I think, hopefully stand out from other people's Zangor, but also gives a different spin on what it means to be a mutant when you are already a bird man, right? Because that's an interesting question to have to answer. And so being on fire is the next stage of being a mutant.
You're too mutant.
I've decided.
Right. Caught fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or like becoming more demon, basically.
Right.
Like, like part of them is being kind of pulled into that. So that, I started working on that. But then I got pulled away, and literally that, like, one thing I found is that I've been pulled from like big project to big project. Like even, the Shadespire Warbands, which I did relatively quickly, was still like painting a group of heroes, right? I take every model seriously, spend a lot of time on each one. And we got to, until 2 days ago, I hadn't painted anything this month at all. And I knew we had Skirmish coming up. So I just decided, like, I thought I'd sit down and maybe like get a Zangor test model done. Literally just so I had something to take a picture of for the podcast. But actually, what I ended up doing was we played our first Skirmish game for the last episode. I knew we were going to play a new one. I knew, I didn't have enough models to get to the 32 points that we'd earned through the last game. So I thought I'll just paint 2 Blood Warriors from the, start collecting Khorne Bloodbound box that, you guys got me when I left PC Gamer. I ended up painting 3, because a rules mess up. I painted one for Glaive and I was like, oh, hang on, I can't actually use him. I'll do 2 dual axe guys instead.
Yeah.
And then I also went to GW to get, some other stuff and picked up the, speaking of terrain, the STC Riser Pattern Ruins box.
Oh yeah.
We played with today.
This is great.
Which is great, that is a £17.50 box of waist high cover, basically. It's super simple. It's probably the simplest piece of terrain I've ever seen, but it's great for what it is, particularly given 40k's terrain rules. So it is just a box that includes 4 walls, 4 waist high walls, 4 half size walls, and 2 manhole covers. which is actually quite a lot. Like you saw, well, you'll see pictures in the show notes of this episode, but you see how much space it actually covers.
Yeah, it's easy enough to fill out a 4x4, I would say.
Yeah.
With the stuff.
And
It'd be interesting.
each is one piece on the sprue. There's no gluing. It's just clipping them off the sprue.
Cool.
All I did was, spray them silver with lead belcher, wash them with Agrax Earthshade, which is a lot of Agrax Earthshade actually to get through, and then dry brush them with Necron Compound. And I did that while painting some of the models in the course of a day, so it's only a couple of hours work. And we ended up with like a decent amount of 40k specific terrain. You can do a lot more detail. There's a lot of detail. In some cases, those pieces of plastic are actually unusually bare. I don't know if they feel unusually bare to me because they are depicting like metal walls and things. You know, flat surfaces don't exist in AOS.
That's really true.
But there are like control panels and things embedded on them that you could certainly.
If you wanted to pick it all out, you could.
Yeah, there are cables and things you could pick out and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've literally just sprayed them, washed them, and dry brushed them. But actually, for the amount of time you spend looking at them in the course of a game,
Definitely.
they work really nicely. So that was a really nice thing. And the other thing I did was paint those 3 Blood Warriors, and I was surprised by how quickly I got through them. Like, I assembled them on Friday, sprayed them Friday night in the dark, which was a weird experience. And then by 10 o'clock this morning, I had 3 painted to a standard I'd kind of like. And that's partly that was an experience in like, 1, I'm getting faster, 2, holy shit, some sculpts are easier than others, right?
Yeah,
so these are like heavily armored Khorne warriors. I found them really fun to paint, and also proof of the color scheme that I've been developing for Khorne for a long time. But because I've mostly done Reavers or the Slaughter Priest who's topless, like I'd sort of envisaged it as being something that would look good when they're heavily armored, and it does look a lot better when they're heavily armored. So it's bronze and silver. So it's deep, dark bronze and silver trim, rather than the kind of gold and red of traditional Khorne.
Yeah.
With flaming weapons. And it was just really fun to do, like pretty quick and like no real tips to emerge from it apart from like, sometimes things are good enough quickly. That was one thing I learned actually, because I was just doing them good enough quickly. So it was the experience of painting only a couple of units, like I would paint a whole box. Because I've tended to have 2 settings, basically. Super detail, spending hours on every part.
Yeah.
And batch painting shitloads. And this was like batch painting 3. Which was great. It was really relaxing. And really fun. I'm really pleased with the result. So, kind of just...
That's awesome.
Yeah. Just a completely positive experience. But what it's made me think, is that, we played another game of Skirmish, which we should get to in a moment. But every time we play Skirmish, we each gain a certain amount of points. And it's not loads. It's like a couple of models.
Yeah.
Or like 1 big model and 1 small model. So with my Khorne stuff, because it's sat there on the side, all I want to do every month is paint just enough for the next Skirmish game. And I'll put aside like a day a month just to paint whatever it is. So I've gained 12 points in the last game, which doesn't say anything about who won, because the game was mad. And that will probably get me like a Blood Crusher and another Blood Warrior.
Nice.
So I might just get those 2 things. And so I'm going to put like a day aside a month to paint 1 thing. And because previously I've been so project based and so batch based that I would like never have done one of the Blood Crushers, which are like the mounted Khorne warriors, without doing all of them. But I quite like the idea. Just do one, because you've made some progress then. You do the next thing.
Yeah. And because you use it straight away. You use it in Skirmish. It's not just sitting around the rest of the unit.
Yeah, and we're enjoying Skirmish.
Yeah,
and
it's great.
eventually that'll lead to Path to Glory maybe, like as your Skirmish, as your Sylvaneth become more numerous and my Khorne kind of builds out. And then we've gained these second armies and they're kind of just there.
Lovely.
So that was really nice. Oh yeah, the other thing. So this is kind of mad and I don't know what I'm going to do about it. So, I went home over Christmas to my parents' house and my dad had dug out another box of Warhammer from the garage.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize there was anything else to find. It turns out what was left to find was my shame pile.
Right.
So when the stuff I brought home last time was like everything I painted as a teenager. And there was stacks of it, but it was all like terribly painted Catachan jungle warriors and bad dwarves. Turns out I had quite a lot of stuff I didn't get around to painting when I was a teenager, as you inevitably do.
Yeah.
So I've gained the seeds of like quite a lot of different things. Like I've got a shitload of like late 90s era plastic lizard men. They're still on sprue in some cases.
Nice.
So there's loads of Saurus warriors and skinks.
I remember painting those, yeah.
Like decent number of orcs and things. But the nuts thing I didn't mention this earlier. I've gained like a 1300 point Skaven army.
We just found it in a box.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, a metal Skaven
Oh
army.
god, metal ones. God, they must be old.
They are old. And so I'm a bit torn because so what I've got is 40 Skaven slaves,
Right.
which is a completely discontinued model. They have rules in AOS and the rules are actually really cool, but they're completely discontinued. 15 gutter runners, also discontinued. Well, not discontinued, but like, you can't buy them easily. I think night runners are easy or you get build mount that runner kit. I don't exactly know how it works. 10 plague sensor bearers, Queek, Skrulk, 2 assassins, and I found a slave driver and enough rats to make rat swarms or wolf rats and like bits of a doom wheel.
Oh well.
And if I find it all, like, it's about like 1500 from Skaven army. So part of me was tempted to just like screech hard left suddenly.
I'm Skaven now.
I'm Skaven now.
Chaos.
Which I'm still thinking about doing because they would be so easy to paint.
Yeah, they would.
They'd be so easy to paint.
The rules are quite fun as well.
I just spray them brown and then wash them and then dry brush them.
Yeah.
And there's so many of them and the rules would be fun. It would be very different.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to rebase them all if they're on squares.
Yeah, but they're in square slaughter bases and they're lightly super glued. So they'll come out of them dead easily, snip the slaughter bases off, put them on 25mm
nice.
bases.
Yeah, that's
Jobs are good. And
a few hours work.
obviously the poses are super old school.
Yeah.
It's old school skinny Skaven.
Total two-dimensional, just kind of like rushing sideways.
There's a sort of retro thing about that appeals. There's also the side of it that like, cause I remember that I had this and I remember when I got the first box back, I was like, where are all the Skaven? Cause this was the army that I played with the most. Apparently I just didn't paint it.
Right.
And in my, like, it was 15 years ago or more. And like, my memory of this is that I had like a Skaven army and I sort of assumed it had to have been painted. But no, I was a lazy person.
Just put them all down in cold metal.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So not even undercoated. So, which is actually great now because it means there's nothing to strip off.
Yeah.
But I'm a bit torn because I don't want to add to my shame pile. And it is like adding 70 models to my shame pile all at once.
Feels like, given what they are, okay, rebasing might take a bit of time, but it's a couple of weekends work if you really did go proper, just dip it, dry brush it, get it on the table.
Yeah. My thought is I could try and find them a new home. Like sell them basically.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like, given that a lot of these models are quite hard to find, like, it's an interesting choice because a lot of these metal, like, if you want to go buy metal Skaven slaves on eBay, they're like £3 a model.
Wow.
And I have 40 of them.
Whoa. That's any army you want, basically, once you've cashed that in.
Well, yeah, or it's like just something else, right? Like pick up some terrain or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
So it's not something that I've decided what I'm going to do with it yet. It's a really cool thing to find. Like, genuinely, what I might do is sell it and put the money towards a present for my mum, who genuinely bought it in the first place. So it might be one of the, or who will have done,
Many
of
years
course
later.
of birthdays and Christmases.
Decades later.
Between the years of, like, 2001 and 2002 or something like that. So it's my, that might be what I'd end up doing with it.
Yeah.
But it was a cool thing to discover.
Yeah, it's quite a treasure trove.
I quite like the idea that, maybe I'll show up with a super retro looking Skaven army. Other than that, it hasn't been a spectacularly busy. Have you had a chance to play much?
No, I really haven't. Because I've just been out of town for the whole duration. So I've not been able to play, not really be able to paint very much stuff. I got some orcs as well. I got the orc warband for Shadespire.
Oh, cool.
So
are we both 4 for 4 now?
Yeah, we're both 4 for 4. So I've got all the cards, got all the rad models.
I haven't built my skeletons yet, but I've, certainly put the cards into use.
Yeah, there's some nice ones in the orc deck actually. So I'm looking forward, we should play again maybe next month or whenever you like.
Well, there's an event coming up at the end of the month, so I'm going to go to my first Shadespire tournament.
Very good. That's exciting.
I'll tell you when it is. Maybe you should come.
Yeah, maybe I should come. All right.
We should talk about what we've been playing.
We should. Playing today, in fact.
Yeah, indeed. We played a game of Skirmish, the next in the campaign, and a game of 40k, and both were great.
They were. Had a great time.
They were really good, and that's very positive, and that's why we got through so much beer.
Yeah, it was a lovely afternoon.
Yeah. Good way to send off the year. So the Skirmish game, we're not going to dwell on just simply for reasons of time, but it was super interesting because we both, through a kind of quirk, you won the first game. And that got you, I think 8 extra points, but you chose to save them.
I did.
So you came into this game with exactly the same Sylvaneth that you played the first time, so that's
hardly
Branch
any
Witch,
Sylvaneth.
2 Dryads, 2 Wanderers.
That's it.
That's it. I got fewer points. I think I got 6 because of losing, but then got 2 on the rewards table.
Yes, I think that's right.
So we both came out with 8. I spent them on the 2 lovely Blood Warriors.
Yeah, looking rad.
Which meant that this game was functionally 32 points against 24.
Yep, I felt quite outnumbered to start with.
Because you really were outnumbered.
Because I was outnumbered.
Slaughter Priest, 4 Reavers, 2 Blood Warriors.
Yeah.
And this was the scenario that we've talked about on the podcast before. Really good scenario where you have to search different ruins to try and find treasure. And when you find treasure, they become capture points. And it was just mad. Basically, so my plan from the beginning of the game was just to charge you, because I had the numbers advantage.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
one way to win a major advantage is just to kill everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm Khorne. Maybe we would just kill everything. Maybe I could just kill everything. And then the problem is solved.
That's right.
Who cares about treasure? We try for treasure later. Skulls first.
Skulls first, treasure later.
Exactly. What actually happened was a kind of mad scrap in the middle of the board.
Yeah.
Where the Branch Witch and the Slaughter Priest wailed on each other turn after turn after turn, neither killing the other. Like, you had a healing item from a previous game because of your victory in the first game that helped you carry on.
Yes.
I had miracle saves that helped me carry on. And Targor managed to do something, bless him, charge off, capture an objective, kill a wanderer.
Yeah.
It was really kind of like, I think I was pretty sure I was going to win. Until, and I'm going to get to this point in my notes, and I appreciate we're skipping through this. I just wrote bees in all caps.
The bees happened. I mean,
your 4th turn.
Yeah, it took me a while to get the bees out, because it's a spell that the Branch Witch casts, which we've covered on a previous episode as being just patently broken and
fucking
damaged.
nuts.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're outnumbered, I'll let off some bees if,
And this gave us actually probably the best quote of the day, which was, rest in bees.
and many of them did, and
So yeah, the bees detonated in a 9-inch explosion, because you rolled a 9 and I failed to dispel it.
that's right. And, the number of dice the value of the dice you roll to cast it is the number of dice you then roll per unit
Within that range.
within that range.
No,
And,
it's always within 9, isn't it?
yeah, so each individual within 9 will get hit by the casting value worth of dice. And each, when you roll that 9 dice, each 6 is a mortal wound. Going back to the mortal wound point.
So, and I'll put some pictures in the show notes, but we literally had a 1 health Branch Witch surrounded by 2 Blood Warriors and a Slaughter Priest.
Yeah.
My guys fanning out to capture objectives in different parts of the map. And then just an explosion of bees that killed both Blood Warriors. Didn't kill the Slaughter Priest by miracle.
Yeah, that was exceptional.
Killed Targor, who's on one of the other objectives, just slaughtered loads of them. And this left, so I went from a full warband because you hadn't killed anything.
No, I wasn't going to kill anything as well with my
To
Wanderers.
3 Blood Reavers in a single moment.
One massive bee explosion.
One weird trick. Slaughter Priests hate it. It's bees. They're everywhere.
After that, it was, we got some interesting rolls on the objectives, because you roll each time you're near enough to an objective, to investigate it and see if there's an artifact inside. And if you roll a 6, it becomes an objective on the battlefield and a thing that you can hold, and the person who holds the most by the end of the game wins. And, 2 were activated fairly on the opposite ends of the board, and Khorne definitely had 1, and 1 Wanderer. Wanderers are crap, by the way, if you've not listened to many previous podcasts where I've described how bad they are. 1 Wanderer trying to hold the other objective. I ended up in a very interesting situation where, after the bee incident, Chris, you retreated.
I hid behind one of the other.
Hid behind a chaos fort, which was one of the objectives. And I was forced to kind of split my forces to try and spread what was left of my warband across 2 different points. And I did a roll run for my Dryad, and the Dryad could have gotten all the way back and outnumbered your 1 remaining kind of Reaver on the left-hand side. And he failed to actually reach it. So he instead went halfway, stood on the middle point, and rolled a 6, and just activated that as a...
It's like, because the middle point is where we had been fighting the entire time.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, now that the bees have murdered everyone, there's treasure here.
Yeah, oh wow, this glittery thing here.
It was great.
It was a very good swingy game.
The best moment was when, because I ended up with just, I'm referring to the Reavers by their names from Shadespire, but just Arnulf having to defend against the Branch Witch, who should have been dead.
Yeah.
So the other thing is the Blood Warriors whiffed every attack they made in 3 turns.
Yeah, they're pretty
terrible. They have 2 hit. They have 2 attacks each, 3 up to hit, re-rolling 1s, and you never had to roll a saving throw against them.
No, they completely just whiffed it.
And then they basically just waved their arms in the air and then were eaten by bees.
Yeah.
That was what they did.
Yeah.
And but that's what you get when you speed paint something. But Arnulf ended up, who was just holding an objective, minding his own business, ended up having to fight a Dryad and the Branch Witch at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, and he got hit twice and he only has 1 health and a 6-up save. And it's like, okay, well, it's 2 6s to stay in the game. And then just immediately rolled 2 6s.
Yeah.
And then had to do a dance around the room. He died immediately after this happened.
He did, but that was pretty amazing. He had the chance to strike back. And also, there was a very good battle shock, because, battle shock is fatal in...
I rolled a 1 on the battle shock that should have wiped me out of the game.
Yeah, so after the bees... After the bees, you expect the battle shock to kick in, but they were obviously in the zone somehow. And,
only a 1 would have got me through that battle shock with no casualties.
Yeah.
And so...
Plus, I think you just lose if you lose your backup battle shock in skirmish.
So the mental thing about this, if you're following the skirmish campaign, is that, so you won a major victory, despite having like 2/3 of the points going into the game.
That's what bees do.
That's
Secret Armory bees.
That's the power of bees.
I had about 10 power in bees.
As Huey Lewis in the News once sang, that's the power of bees.
The power of bees.
That spell's fucking nuts. It was just...
Oh, it's totally broken in skirmish. No doubts about it.
But the thing is, like the fight between the Slaughter Priest and the Branch Witch went on so long, and either of them could have died sooner.
Yeah. It was really dramatic. It was very dramatic. Can't believe he survived the bees as well. A worm bit him as well. That was good.
A worm bit him in the face, and then he went completely mental and took like 4 wounds off her.
He went ham.
That was good. It was a very good game.
It was really good.
So the nuts thing is you got like a shitload of points for the major victory. But then I rolled 2 6s on the reward table.
Yeah.
That immediately got me 6 bonus points.
You might
so
as well
we're both on 44 points for the next game.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? And, so I'll be bringing a Colonel Hunter, who might also be a little bit broken in skirmish. We'll see how they do.
Let's see what you can do with an equal points value.
It's a bit
I'm going to bring a Blood Crusher.
Nice.
And its only job is going to be to chase the Branch Witch.
Round and round and round before the bee thing happens.
I don't want the bee thing to happen again. I'm really glad I have a Dispel. I'm really glad I have the Slaughter Priest, not a different hero.
Right, yeah.
Because otherwise that would feel really uninteractive.
Yeah. The reason it took me so long to get off was because, it was dispelled once, and I think I failed.
It wasn't. You just failed the first time.
Oh, did I just fail it?
Yeah.
It's casting value of 5, so you're kind of odds on to get it.
That's nuts.
I know. It's quite good, isn't it?
But you roll per unit, right? Not per.
Right, yeah. So in the main game it's soft considerably. But, a hero is still a unit. So it's still a pretty great spell in, the main game as well.
Yes, please to the bees. But that was our game of skirmish, which was ace.
Yeah,
but
it's
we're
great
kind of motoring past it for time reasons. But yeah, also partly because it comes down to the bees.
Yeah, that was the story.
So then we decided to play a game of 40k with the new train that I'd painted and everything else. And what we set up, I thought it looked great. I was really pleased with how it looked.
It was awesome.
Because obviously we've got sort of, rough and ready 40k armies at the moment. Neither of us are really done with prepping for this.
No.
So, I brought my 1,000 Sons from 30k, who I am running in 40k as Chaos Space Marines, with the idea that they're not really 1,000 Sons, that they're sort of pretender renegade Astartes, basically. Tzeentch aligned Astartes, but not 1,000 Sons.
Yeah.
So the Ahriman model is a sorcerer, that kind of thing. Kind of have the idea that they are sort of Tzeentch aligned heretic Astartes that, believe themselves to be like the scions of Prospero, right? Like kind of avenging sons, but not Gilliman, who is the literal avenging son.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes, I know what I mean.
And, maybe they are defecting, Blood Ravens or something like that, who believe they've discovered something about their heritage, that kind of thing. That's kind of the idea I have for using the 40k. With a bunch of demons for 58 power level.
Yeah.
And you had your Iron Hands, Primaris.
Yeah.
Some Space Wolves.
From the Burning of Prospero set.
Yeah, so who we're thinking of as like Space Wolf veterans that kind of led maybe demon hunters, and some Sisters of Silence.
Oh, yes.
55 points. So I was slightly ahead of you. And we played open play in the scenario Kill the Courier. Not open play, I mean open war. Using the open war cards.
The cards you draw to randomly generate a scenario.
So we ended up with a kind of mad chevrons shaped deployment where we could each put a model in the middle of the board, but there was like a kind of expanding triangle behind that. with an objective called Kill the Courier, where we each nominate a model that can't be our warlord, and the first person to kill that model wins. So the way we'd set up the board was like a sort of series of like metal ruins, like sort of 40k era kind of bases surrounding a kind of more arcane looking ancient ruin. And I kind of see this as, in my head, this was like a sort of destroyed imperial base surrounding a kind of profane heretical ruin that had been maybe discovered by both sides at the same time. And my kind of headcanon explanation for the Kill the Courier was that maybe both, because you chose your Primaris Ancient standard bearer, and I chose my Terminator Captain. The notion that maybe both of them had taken something from the ruin, and having them both having taken something was what was kind of unleashing demons and
Lots
stuff.
of demons, yeah.
But, you know, whoever can kill the other one first can reclaim and either seal or fully open this chaos warp plug. So we had a really interesting point where you had like a kind of gun line behind cover, and I had my guys kind of behind cover, my Chaos Space Marines behind cover at the back, but with a sort of phalanx of demons up front. Because demons in 40k, siege demons in 40k work very differently.
Yeah.
They're much more keen to get up close and personal. They're crap in combat, but every siege demon has a 4-up invulnerable save.
Yeah, very tough.
Which means that like they take a while to bring down. Like they don't fold me. Like you really have to focus fire them, take them down.
Yeah.
So my plan at the start of the game was to throw the demons at you and do as much damage as possible. And then, follow up with the Marines and just sort of burst through the tattered remains. Cause you kept your Inceptors, which are the jetpack, assault bolter, Primaris in space.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I had like a bubble around the Terminators at all times so that, cause I could have deployed the Terminators in a teleportarium, but I chose to keep them on the ground so that I could choose the captain as
the actual,
as the courier.
Yeah.
Which in hindsight might have been a mistake, but like that's what I'd done. What was your plan from the beginning?
Well, it's simply to create a kind of fire base, and Space Marines don't have a huge number of options, well the Primaris don't with what I had anyway, but they do have options if you've got like repulsor tanks and that sort of thing. They've got some fast attack. But with I had 5 Primaris intercessors who are just kind of basic Space Marines with bolt rifles, and I had some leadership. So I had, the Ancient stood right behind them, their captain stood right behind them, and their lieutenant stood right behind them as well. And if you're within those overlapping 6-inch buff bubbles, you get to reroll hits and you get to reroll wounds when you're shooting with your Primaris Space Marines. So basically they just sort of castled up like you would on a chessboard really, and just sort of sat in the corner there, and just waiting to get rapid fire opportunities, which is when they actually start to get the dice to really start doing damage. And Primaris also have 1 AP or rend as it's known in AOS, which is quite useful. On the other side, the Space Wolves held the other flank and the center indeed, and they both took cover as well. They had, I was using, is it Gygor? Is that his name? The hero from the, Prospero box set as their captain. So there were 2 separate kind of little forces of Space Marines working together. And they were also like to the back and to the left and setting down like a fire base. Then way up front, and we were talking earlier about how the fact that, you know, the deployment zones meet at points right in the middle of the battlefield. I decided to put my Sisters of Silence right up there, just right next to the center of the board, inside those ruins, which is also where a huge number of pink horrors were already deployed. So I just kind of like stood them up face to face with the pink horrors at the very beginning of the game.
Look at the show notes, because this looked fucking rad.
Yeah,
it basically meant that all of the Space Marines was hiding behind a wall, like 20 feet away, and 5 Sisters of Silence just held the line in the center of this chapel, basically.
And it felt so right for them. And I did it because I knew it would look cool, and also because it's good because they've got this aura that debuffs spells and that kind of stuff, which turned out to be useful. But there's the mental image of them being so fearless, which they are. They're so completely fearless. They're just so infused with, you know, love for the Emperor that they just don't. If they die, they don't care, and they'll just all they want to do is destroy this corruption with their own massive, massive swords. So they went straight to the heart of the battle, and the Space Marines gave them covering fire to an extent while they were hopefully to try and battle through.
Yeah, it was kind of, I stuck on some music, which we've been doing for the last couple of games we played, which
it's really good.
Because it creates, it's more about the cinematic moments, and this was a game of really good cinematic moments.
It was.
So you won the first turn.
I did.
And you shot guns.
That's why I took the first turn, basically, to get a free round of shooting.
And that's when I think you learned that the 4-up invulnerable save on all Tzeentch demons is actually kind of
pretty darn good. It is. And also, just shooting at the limits of your range with, like Space Marine bolt rifles when you don't have rapid fire is also, you just lose a lot of your power straight away, which is interesting for Space Marines. Like, they kind of need to be within that kill zone to actually really unleash their armory. But yeah, you're right. I poured a load of fire into the pink horrors, and, it did not do a lot at all because,
you killed 2.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so they can, as well, if they roll a 1 on their battle shocks, they can come back as they do in AOS as well, so that's always the fear. And they are very, very tough and a very different type of unit. Everything just seems tougher in 40k, actually.
Yeah, it was interesting because it felt more like, it was a little bit like, cause I saw the amount of dice you were rolling, and like, okay, that's a dead pink horrors, cause like, if it was Judicators doing that,
right, yeah.
That's like half the unit gone.
Yeah, yeah.
But actually in 40k it was like, oh, hang on, these are like a screening unit, like these are, and it felt a bit more themey as well. I kind of liked that about it. I felt like you had that moment of shooting into this sort of illusory horde that is not behaving according to the physics you understand.
Right,
it's kind of getting out of the way constantly.
Yeah. And then, of course, the Sisters of Silence waded straight into the pink horrors right in front of them and started to do some damage.
So you got like amazing wound rolls, but because damage is per model, not per unit, in 40k you just completely carved up 2 horrors.
Right, yeah.
Initially I thought you killed 7 of them.
Yeah, so in AOS rules they would have just like, I quite like that about AOS to an extent, like the idea that units in close combat with enormous swords could cleave in half multiple pink horrors. Whereas in 40k, a unit of 5 sisters could only kill 5 things. So they're better against bigger demons, perhaps, if they're going to be chopping down stuff that has like loads of high wound counts, because
they could kill more than that. It depends on the number of attacks they get. It was because the reason it was because 2 attacks ultimately went through.
Right.
And they were D3 damage each.
So there's one.
And you got 6 damage on 2.
That's true.
Yeah, because it was 6, wasn't it? So you got 6 damage, but it ended up being 3 damage per horror.
Yes, correct.
Because they had 3 attacks each, so they could have all killed everything, but it's just...
Yeah, that's true. Turns out.
It's just the damage value.
Yeah, but they totally messed up 2 horrors, and,
Yeah, and didn't do much in return. My first turn, I just started moving everything forward, because, like, because I sort of figured the sisters were held up in the middle of the board, I just thought I could run past them with everything else. Shooting didn't do loads, because in cover, Marines have a 2-up save and nothing will happen there. I killed like 2 people, basically, with shooting. But what I did do was I sort of moved my horrors up, and then I thought, actually, I'm going to charge my other group of horrors into the... Actually, no, I'm skipping ahead. I should talk about what happened in the psychic phase, because not a lot happened in the psychic phase. Because Sisters of Silence are a huge pain in the ass. But even Sisters of Silence don't stop a Herald of Tzeentch from Perils of Warping on the first casting roll of the game.
Yeah. That was good.
So my first act in the psychic phase was to deal 2 mortal wounds to myself.
Yeah. Warp's a dangerous place.
It is a dangerous place. Even if you're a demon, apparently.
Yeah.
That's where you live. I suppose accidents happen at home.
That's very true.
Exactly.
Very true.
So, yeah, that was good. Smite failed because, even though all the pink horror units can attempt to cast Smite, one thing that's really interesting about the Sisters of Silence, so the Sisters of Silence give you a bubble where it's -1 to cast. Horrors cast, on 1d6. So, and Smite is on a 5. So they have to roll 6 if Sisters are nearby.
Yeah.
Also, we were using the beta rules, which is every time you subsequently try and cast Smite, it gets harder by 1.
Yeah.
So that means only the first one is even possible. The second problem is that Smite targets the nearest unit, and Sisters of Silence are not affected by spells.
No.
Which I take as they absorb it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't just go off on someone else, it goes on them, and then doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. So it meant there was this 18-inch bubble around the center of those Sisters of Silence holding the center of the board where mortal wound spells just don't do anything. They get sucked into that unit. Which maybe to talk about what we were talking about earlier, that's a perfect example of like interactive mortal wounds, where it's like,
Yeah, it's true, actually. Yeah.
it's like, oh shit. Like,
Systems interacting to kind of negate that.
yeah, it was like, I have to kill these. So I ended up, charging them with the pink horrors. Even though your Sisters of Silence were armed with swords, they did have an Overwatch grenade.
They did, called Psych Out Grenade. Psych. Yeah, so they threw a grenade in self-defense, and it's a D3 attack. So you roll D3, and you roll a D3, and that's the number of attacks it makes, basically. But things can only hit on a 6 if you're overwatching. So I managed to get one hit off with a 6, I think. But if you hit with a 6 with a Psych Grenade and you're targeting a demon, it's just a mortal wound straight off, just because it freaks them out.
Yeah.
Just destroys them, the matter they're made of, basically.
And because I'm an idiot, I accidentally removed the champion of that particular
yeah,
pink
that's
horrors.
true, yeah.
So, that was a good Overwatch grenade. In Melee, both of the pink horror units that were engaged with the Christmas, the Sisters of Silence, managed to kill one. So two of the Sisters of Silence died. But bear in mind, this is like 2 5 power level units fighting 1 4 power level unit.
Yeah, yeah.
Sisters of Silence were the fucking heroes of this game. I loved watching them.
They were amazing.
I got a good photo, hopefully, that'll end up in the show notes of just the Sisters of Silence standing on this kind of chaos demonic circle surrounded by pink horrors. But you killed enough pink horrors that turn that some of them ran away.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen in AOS.
No, their bravery of 10 means that you're never going to be really affecting them.
They really held the line. And then obviously the turn went back to you because that's how it works in 40k.
Yeah.
This was the turn that, actually I don't think loads happened because I think maybe things go a bit faster when it's interesting, U40k, because people seem to live longer. The turns seem to sometimes go a little bit faster because it's more logical to just hold position.
Yeah. And especially once you've started to memorize all your weapons profiles, you're rolling everything pretty quickly. And Space Marines aren't going to be moving around very much. I didn't have any transports, and they'd have been foolish to move out of cover, with the army bearing down on them. So I simply stood there and shot.
Yeah. This was the turn that you shot at the Flamers, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is the turn the Mortal Wounds really went off. Oh, sorry, not Mortal Wounds. The Invulnerable Save really went off.
Yes, yeah.
Because, you were just firing, like, you got your entire line of bolters, Primaris, Space Wolves, everything, just to fire at the Flamers. And they didn't go anywhere. I think you lost one of them.
One or two, I think, yeah.
Just from the Mortal Wound save.
I think it was, there was one left by the end of it, but
like in AOS, like,
they're
committing
toast,
4 units to shooting at them.
Yeah, yeah. It was an interesting feeling, really, because, they were just sort of slowly drawing closer. And I knew that they're very good in close combat. They've got a very good kind of short range attack, and they're actually a very dangerous unit. So it's kind of an interesting, scary thing to watch them come close. And it felt like I had to focus fire to take them down in the end, and still couldn't do it.
Yeah, my plan at the start had been to buy time for my Marines to move up with the demons.
Yeah.
So this was still sort of working, I think. But yeah, that was, and it was, so even you having to shoot everything with the Flamers, shooting everything at the Flamers was kind of worth it.
Yeah.
I think
so.
This was also the turn that, the horrors killed everyone except the Sister Superior.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of rad, because basically she ended up stood on top of this, like, altar in the center of the board, surrounded by pink horrors. But because she was still there, and this was your turn, that meant that my subsequent turn, my psychic phase, she's still there doing her 18-inch you shall not pass bubble.
Shutting down the magic in the surrounding area.
So I desperately wanted to cast Treason of Tzeentch, because it works differently in 40k. In 40k, it basically gives me one of your heroes for a turn, for fighting.
Which is amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
And I really wanted to mind control Guygor. Because, obviously it wasn't Guygor, your Space Wolf captain.
Yeah.
Just because of for 30k reasons, I wanted to mind control him, and I wanted him to beat up the Primaris lieutenant he was standing next to.
Yeah.
And to do this, I have to cast a spell on an 8, but because the Sister of Silence is still alive, that's a 9, and I might have to roll a 10, so that's off. And then I have to beat Guygor's leadership on 2d6, and his leadership is 9. And I rolled an 8, and it was agonizing, because I really wanted him.
Could have been amazing.
Yeah, I fucking hate Space Wolves. I hate Space Wolves. I'll say it.
Yeah.
I hate Space Wolves. And I really wanted to mind control him and have him eviscerate the Primaris lieutenant with his lightning.
It would have been hilarious. It would have been funny.
It didn't happen. At least I didn't mortal wound myself. That's what I'll say.
That's true.
Sort of shooting from my Marines managed to just sort of chip away a few more of yours, but like, I was sort of spreading my fire at that point, and I don't think it was very efficient. I was kind of trying to, reposition. However, I did finally manage to drag down the final Sister Superior in combat with the horrors. But what a fucking stand she
Amazing.
made.
I mean,
It
she
was
that's
great.
like 3 or 4 turns, didn't she? And that unit, I mean, just like chopping away at all, dozens of these little pink brats who wouldn't go away.
Well, yeah, but I mean, by the time they had finished dealing with her, I only had like 1 pink horror unit left.
That's true.
Like, I mean, so that's actually skipping ahead a bit, but like, they've been held up in the center of the board for so long.
Yeah.
This was the turn I did forget to charge both my Flamer and my Herald.
Yeah, that would have changed things a little bit.
Maybe, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then your next turn was just cleaning up, basically. It was just getting some shots in.
Well, I was, the thing is like, you were moving within the deadly 12-inch, 15-inch rapid fire range of, the Space Wolves with their ordinary bolters, and the Primaris with their, improved rifle bolters. Suddenly everyone's getting 2 shots instead of 1, and suddenly things start dropping quite quickly. So, the Flamer went down, I believe. I think he was taken down.
Yeah, I lost the Flamer, I lost the Herald.
He lost the Herald, and then I sort of moved up.
You also shot 3 horrors to kill 1 unit completely, I think. That's
Yeah. So yeah, it was just cleaning up the stuff that was nearest to me, basically, but it's just sort of resetting again, waiting for the next wave of Tzeentch stuff to get closer.
Which it did.
Yeah.
Because now that the Sister Superior was dead, on my next turn I could afford to do Warp Time, which allows me to get a move in the Psychic phase, which meant that I could kind of reconsolidate on the left-hand side of the board, my left, which is where your sort of Primaris Fortress was. I was struggling a bit because I think in hindsight, given that the objective was to hunt one of your characters, I should have put the Terminators in a Teleportarium and just taken a risk on which character I pick.
Yeah.
Because being able to drop behind you would have been a really interesting threat.
Yeah.
That's not what I did. So I ended up sort of charging forward, but because, Warp Time is a Psycho spell which went off, which allows me to, move a unit in the Psychic phase as if it was the movement phase. I bolted 1 tactical squad all the way forward, the one with the melter gun. So suddenly they haven't advanced, but they are suddenly super close to your Primaris. And the idea was to get them into combat, move the horrors up as well to partially screen them from the wolves.
Yeah.
My idea was get the horrors into combat with the wolves and get that first unit of tactical marines into combat with the Primaris to tie them up. Because I've got a lot of wounds to chew through before I can get to the Ancient, but then behind them is the Sorcerer, the Terminators, and the other tactical squad, or Chaos Marine squad, which I think will get to the Ancient within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Because you still had your Inceptors in space, but you otherwise lacked flexibility. So the idea was, I'm just going to punch you really hard now. Like, now that you've kind of been softened up by the other stuff. However, shooting didn't do a lot. I think I killed like 2 Primaris that turn.
Yeah.
But crucially, those tactical marines failed their charge. Which is, so that was, kind of a big deal because it meant that they were about 5 inches from the Primaris. Or 6 inches.
Yeah, a little bit further, I think. I mean, it was about an odds roll, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it was about 6 inches. So
yeah.
you're right. It was about odds.
Yeah.
But, out in the open.
Yeah.
And then the next turn, which was your 4th, was mental.
So this is, the nice thing about I love to bring things down from space. To do it with Stormcast, to do it with Space Marines, I'll do it all day long. So I chose to bring down the 3 Inceptors, and if you're not sure what these are, they're basically just incredibly heavily armoured gun platforms that have an enormous sort of chain bolter in each hand, and they just come in from space. Like they're in a giant spacesuit. They drop from a spaceship and then they hurtle down and then use their thrusters to stop themselves from dying so that they can hover and then, destroy the enemy. Brought them down right behind my Primaris castle.
Which I didn't expect you to do. I was keeping 1 tactical squad back to screen.
Yes.
Like, literally, prosecutor from space logic. Keeping a unit back to screen the Terminators.
Yep. Which is sensible, but I knew that, they've got 1 AP, which is good considering the amount of dice they're rolling, but they don't have enough to solo take out a load of Terminators without getting battered, I think. And so I was always wary about actually going after the Terminators, even though I would have done it if the opportunity had arisen, perhaps. Instead, what I wanted was to bring them down right behind all of my heroes and inside all of their buff bubbles, so that they were getting rerolls of 1 to hit, rerolls of 1 to wound, and because they roll huge numbers of dice, they've got 2 of these huge bolters each, so you're rolling 6 dice per thing. So you're up to like 18 dice, rerolling 1s and 3s to hit, means that you're only removing 2s from the pile in both like to hit and to wound phases. So they just do vast amounts of damage. There's just huge amounts of a weight of dice with a little bit of AP is good enough to take out a lot of ordinary Space Marines.
It turns out, in a very kind of Zinchian twist, you killed 9 tactical Marines in a single shot with those guys.
It was pretty brutal. It was really good.
So that unit that had been warp timed ahead just got annihilated. And that guarantees that the remaining 1 will flee.
Yes.
Because of their leadership value.
Battle shock, yeah.
And then your Primaris Lieutenant, who'd been like momentarily seconded to the Space Wolves, kind of melee focused Power Sword Lieutenant, also went completely ham.
He did.
Charged into the Horus from the side, and even despite their 4-up and vulnerable save, managed to kill all of them.
Yeah, with his Power Sword, yeah.
Yeah.
That was, what a cool, that's a cool one.
It was great.
Well.
Like, it was really cool.
Yeah, it was.
Because I love the idea that, like, your Sisters of Silence just held the line in the middle and bogged me down and slowed everything up and made my spells less reliable. And they died for that. And then as I reached your line, suddenly, like, from space, just gun platforms. Like, I was expecting them to come down behind, but they came down in front.
And suddenly,
Yeah.
a wall of fire. And I love the idea that the Sisters were holding the line because the ship was literally coming into orbit, like above, like,
Yeah, they weren't waiting. They were racing to the rescue.
Yeah, and that this was the time, and they just about made it. And I envision these buffs, like, it's so cool that, the Space Marine lieutenants and captains, they give the buffs, these hit and wound buffs. I like to imagine it as them just kind of beaming telemetry data into their visors almost.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of these 3 Inceptors coming down from space and suddenly receiving all this information, like a total battlefield tactical analysis, where to hit weak spots, and then just absolutely just obliterating
particularly because that unit had just sort of like warped
forwards,
right?
yeah. Like that thing from The Ring, you know, when you go through the television.
I see it that way with warp time,
forwards,
right? Like time is just accelerated for them and not for you. And yet they get perfect telemetry data from their own men.
Because they're so tactically astute that they can even keep track of this, you know, crazy Zinchian magic.
Yeah, it was great. And I think particularly that it was the Iron Hands that kind of saved the day, because the Wolves didn't do loads.
No, they sort of held. They held. They were a bit rubbish. Yeah.
And that's the right way around. I hate Space Wolves. So, but yeah, like that notion that then this sort of like precision fire from above just annihilates these Astartes. So we called the game after that because partly for time reasons, but also partly because it was unlikely I was going to crack it.
Would have been tough.
Like I lost an entire, like,
I had most of my stuff left.
Huge chunk of my, power value, like in one go, basically. And I mean, that was like, so I can't remember exactly how many hits got through. I think it was like 13 hits got through or something. And I failed like
a lot.
9 4-up saves.
Yeah.
So that's enough. So it was sort of dicey, but like, it doesn't matter because it was such a cool moment.
Yeah.
It was like the right thing to happen. It wasn't just like you fired a gun that had been there the entire game and it happened to kill everybody.
Yeah.
It was
a badass kind of drop from space.
And because I had, you know, that had, affected me the entire game because I had been screening against it the entire game.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where it came down not where I expected, with a shitload of rerolls. And that was like actually the worst place for it to be. It wasn't behind me. Behind me would have been fine.
Yeah, you had that covered, yeah. It was awesome.
It was great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it gets me excited about collecting a Space Marine armory again. I just can't at the moment because I've got too much AOS, but I love playing the game every now and then, enjoying it.
It was really fun.
How different it feels.
It'd be really fun to do every now and then.
Yeah.
As a kind of like, I don't know how much mileage we're going to get out of our kind of like janky, half legal armies.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Definitely want to play more of it. We should do some questions.
Sure.
Our first question comes from Drew, who writes, what are your personal miniature highlights for 2017 and what are you looking forward to in 2018? Happy New Year, everybody. Drew.
Painting wise, my highlight was probably the Vanguard Hunters that I did, which turned out super well and was super fun to paint. Really nice mix of kind of textures on those models, and I love the posing. Did a little bit of kind of, basing with them, put them on rocks and stuff. And I think that was probably the unit I'm most proud of this year, I would say. Liked it.
I think for me, it's Lord of Change.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really predictable choice, but I worked really hard on that model. And like, it leads to things like Armies on Parade, which is a really positive experience as well. So, in terms of games, my highlight was probably the final game of the campaign we played, just because I loved that the Lord of Change died in such a perfect way.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great
I think in
moment.
terms of actual play.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's either that or the first game I played at Blackout against, Sam, who's Bottle, who's the guy who did the Hinterlands rules.
Oh yeah.
Because that was just a really great game.
It's all like the Griffin and, was it Griffin?
Yeah, it was the Empire Lord on
Yeah, right.
Demi-Griff or Griffin. Just Griff.
Yeah.
Just Griff.
So it's just Griff.
Just Griff.
So it's friends.
That was great. That was, yeah. What would your gaming actual play highlight be?
Play highlight would also be the finale to that. As I love the Path to Glory arc as well, actually. Path to Glory is really good fun. The skirmish through to Path to Glory is a very, very satisfying way to play the game, and I had a really good time with it this year. Fighting lots of undead. What are they called? Ghouls.
Flesh-eater courts.
Millions of ghouls.
Tasty courts. What is next that you want to happen? Yes?
Yes, death. Death is what I want to happen next. I mean, I'm always going to have a weak point for Stormcast releases and, take them, probably always buy some new Stormcast ready. But I think, if I was going to switch up armies to a different kind of faction, a different Grand Alliance, it wouldn't be Chaos. Not enough in destruction for me, but death is what I want.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to, I think the thing I'm most looking forward to is Shadespire organized play. I really want to see how that pans out. I really want to do that and go to the things and try and win the plastic stuff. That's kind of what I want to do. In terms of models, I don't know yet because I'm so disinclined to expand my shame pile that I kind of don't want there to be like an amazing update to the Slaves of Darkness range that I feel like I have to have straight away.
Right, yeah.
Not a bad thing if it happens, obviously.
Of course.
It's just on my self-control, but nonetheless. If otherwise, I'm kind of looking forward to getting my Tzeentch Mortal army up and running. I'm kind of looking forward to how that feels. Like, I will have a bunch of Skyfires, and I hope that doesn't feel like a negative play experience.
No, I'm sure we'll be fine.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Skyfires are very good. You should have good things in your army.
Yeah, exactly. It might be interesting just playing with stuff that's good.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good thing to do.
Okay. Thanks, Drew, for that question. Next question comes from Fee, getting his monthly question in. 2 minutes monthly. He writes, "Hi to Zerthston and Tom Stormcast." It's close enough for jazz.
I'll take it.
This month's question is, how do you make sure your opponent is having a good time when the game swings against them? I had a game of 40k recently where I kept saving my disgustingly resilient saves, negating almost all of the damage put out by my opponent's Dark Eldar. He had put together a competitive list, and as this kept happening, I could tell he was pretty annoyed. Is there anything you can do to help the game feel less awful for the person getting diced? Thanks, Pete/Fienia.
Just don't gloat, I suppose.
Yeah, I think being sort of, there's definitely a line. Like, if you're too kind of apologetic about your dice, you can make it sound like you're accidentally diagnosing your opponent with like some kind of illness. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm terribly sorry. I've rolled a 6 again.
Yeah.
But there's a line where so I think dice are dice. And if you are good at acknowledging when you have been lucky, then it takes a sting out of when you're unlucky. Like, Dunning-Kruger effect maintains that you will always believe that when you roll well, it's because you're great. It's not. It's because you rolled well. And if you can go, oh, I got lucky there, then it's hard to be annoyed, I think. I think if someone rolls like 4 6s and goes, yes, I deserve that because I'm great, then that is frustrating. The other side to that is, I suppose it wouldn't apply to the scenario described because I imagine your opponent, if he's building a competitive list, knows how Nurgle's disgustingly resilient rule works.
Yeah.
But avoiding scenarios where you reveal hidden information that should technically be known by your opponent is a good thing. Like, I played a X-Wing tournament 2 weeks ago where, it was interesting. I was using the new Resistance bomber from the new movie, and I expected my opponent to know what a particular type of bomb, a proton bomb, does because they've been in the game forever.
Right.
And he happened to not know, and one went off and really screwed him over. And I felt a bit bad about it because he didn't know, but I didn't feel terribly bad because those bombs have been in the game for years.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel terrible about the fact that, like, I hadn't, you know, also the card was, he chose not to look at the card that was face up on my side of the, you know what I mean? There were reasons for it.
Yeah.
But in a different game, I knew that there was a turn where it makes a huge difference that the Resistance Bomber is one of the ships in X-Wing that can stop. Not every ship in X-Wing has a stop maneuver.
Yeah.
Most things have to keep moving forwards, and that affects the range game and how you strategically plan around that. So I knew I was in a situation where the ideal thing for me to do is to stop, because my opponent probably won't expect that, and they'll probably slow roll me. And I knew that was probably logical, but I knew that it wasn't fun if I know that and he doesn't. So I just said, have you played against Resistance Bomber before? And he said, no, I haven't. And I said, okay, look at this. And just gave him the dial. And just said, not what I've placed. It doesn't show him what I've chosen to do, but just look at this. Look at all the options on it. I could see him rotating through it. And then he went, oh. And I went, you just seen the stop, haven't you? And he's like, yep. And then we played, and then it was fine. And I actually did do the stop.
Right.
And it still worked.
Yeah.
But I felt better about the fact that that stop had worked, because in terms of mitigating the range of his subsequent attack and the rest of it, because we were then acting with completely open information. It was then genuinely a game between the two of us, rather than me kind of revealing something based on the new ship I was running. So I guess my answer to being a good winner is, like, be as transparent as you can with what your advantages are. Avoid gotchaing people, basically. Because I could have gotcha'd him with that.
Yeah.
And I have been gotcha'd by surprise stop maneuvers on new ships before.
Right.
And it's a shit feeling. Because you're like, technically dials should be open information. So,
Yeah.
like, you know, that's just one of those things. And then otherwise just acknowledging when your dice are nonsense.
Yeah. And also forgiving people a few moments of grump about it. I think, and not holding it against them, because it does feel bad, doesn't it, when it happens? It is unlucky.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's also on people to be good losers as well.
Definitely. But I think, you know, you can feel bad about something for a minute or two and, you know, show a bit of salt and then actually kind of come back. So give people a bit of leeway to feel bad about things is also reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair.
To an extent.
Like, I think, you know, particularly in a kind of, I think if someone is also building their list for competitive play and they happen to get completely scuppered by Nurgle's disgustingly resilient rule, actually, to be fair, I think the fault is on them in terms of getting annoyed.
Right.
Because that is pure dice, right? Like, that's pure, if I roll lots of sixes, nothing happens.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that doesn't really change anything about the viability of their competitive build. It just means in the most extreme edge cases, it doesn't work. Which nothing works.
Got to expect.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing works in the most extreme edge cases. So yeah, I think there's a responsibility to go, like, I mean, maybe in that scenario, what you can do is the person who's on the receiving end to go, like, well, 99% of the time, this isn't going to happen. So if this is your tournament prep, you don't really take
worry
anything
about
from
it.
it. Don't worry about this.
Yeah, at least you got it out of the way, right?
Yeah, you'll get beaten if your Nurgle opponent only rolls sixes. Everyone will.
Yeah, that's true.
Nothing's going to beat that, so, you know.
Keep rolling those sixes, Fee.
Just keep rolling sixes all the time. Our next question comes from Armored, who writes, there's the sound of a phantom horse.
Snorting out of the window. We're on the second floor. That was disconcerting.
That was terrifying. Anyway, Armored writes, Dear Brushes and Dice Rollers, thank you for the lovely podcast. Your genuine love for the hobby and enjoyment it brings is wonderfully uplifting and a too rare treat once a month. I only need to hear intro music to bring a smile to my face. Aside, the music reminds me of 1970s BBC children's television themes for some reason, perhaps related to the joy it brings me.
Oh.
So thanks, Mike Debenham, for the 1970s BBC children's theme joy you've brought. Anyway, my question, like myself and you both play video games as a hobby. I find that unfortunately the siren call on my PC is easy and I often just play games instead of working on models. How do you manage your time between PC or console and painting? Do you dedicate an evening to your miniatures, or do you have an insatiable desire to get painting which drives you to it? Yours distractedly, Armored.
I think we've spoken before about how we use miniatures as kind of an escape from screens and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And increasingly, actually, I find it hard to play a game on PC for more than an hour or two. I find it really hard to get absorbed in it in the way that I used to. Whereas painting, actually, you find incredibly absorbing. It's almost like it has taken up that slot in my brain of a thing I can put loads of hours into and find just relaxing for long periods of time. So I can play a game for 90 minutes, 2 hours, if that, and then go do some painting and paint for.
Yeah, the thing I look forward to is painting. I tend to feel guilty if I get drawn into a game for too long.
Right.
Or I play it past the point where I'm enjoying myself. That's the thing that's really hurt Dota for me, is that I used to do loads, is because I didn't actually enjoy every minute of it. I didn't get anything out of it. Whereas miniatures, I don't enjoy every minute of it, because sometimes you are base coating and it's boring.
Yeah.
But I do get something out of it. So it feels like to me that if you're constantly getting distracted by games and things, that means that painting itself is not a source of pure joy. Because if it was, you'd want to do that instead. Because I do think it's better than most video games. So if that's the way you feel about it, then you're probably at a point where you are more interested in playing than painting, I'm guessing.
Maybe.
Possibly. Yeah. In which case, I think it's a question of picking armies and models and things that you can enjoy painting quickly, so you can get back to the stuff. Because there's no point not doing the things you enjoy, whether that's painting or playing video games. You shouldn't feel guilty about playing video games. That's what you'd rather do, because it's your leisure time. Yeah. So that's I guess what I'm getting at. You absolutely should play video games because that's what you actually want to do. You shouldn't feel like miniatures painting is a job waiting for you that you're procrastinating from. But if you're not enjoying the process of painting enough that you're being distracted by games, then that means that maybe you're not painting the right thing, or you're not approaching painting in the right way, but that'll depend on what you're painting. Yeah. Basically what I'm saying is Necrons.
Go Necron. Get the dry brush out.
Yeah, just do some Necrons. You'll be fine.
Get some dry brush from Skaven. Look in the attic.
If you're looking for a big pile of Metalscape, no. Our next question comes from Laura, who writes, "Hi Chris and Tom, like you, I'm enjoying Shadespire and I'm considering playing some tournaments next year. However, I've never done any competitive gaming before. Do you have any tips on how to get into organised play and how to get the most out of it? Thanks for the excellent pod, Laura."
I'm looking forward to trying some for the first time this year.
Yeah,
Shadespire's been in the vehicle.
That's really
never done it, no.
See, because this is how I made friends in X-Wing, and I still really value this experience, but it is an interesting skill set. So one thing I would say is days tend to be pretty long. So no joke, bring some cereal bars and a banana.
Right.
You will thank me.
Get that energy.
For that piece of advice.
Nice.
Just have in your bag easy energy food, healthy food, because you get hungry during the day and you need energy from game to game. Shadespire is a seated game, unlike X-Wing, which tends to be standing. Well, you can play X-Wing if you're seated, if you're very tall.
Okay.
But I'm not. So X-Wing for me is a 10-hour, 11-hour standing day, which is gets to you. Your legs go. Yeah. But I think even so, you want to stay kind of alert and look after yourself. Drink plenty of water. All that stuff actually does make a difference. Your brain has to keep working. And the deeper you go in the tournament, if you're doing well, game 4 or 5 actually really matters more than your first game. So you should try and
pace yourself.
Still awake. This is not the case if you're playing competitive Warhammer, because I believe you should start drinking as early as is socially acceptable.
Right.
And start enjoying yourself more,
Yeah.
But I think for a strategy, really kind of intense competitive play game like Shadespire or X-Wing or whatever, then, that's a thing to think about. How do I stay alert 9 hours into this? Not that every tournament's going to be that long, but nonetheless. Other thing is just sort of, I suppose Shadespire's not too much of a problem. Have easy ways of moving your stuff from table to table, quickly pack up and be ready to move, because that can be a frustration, is to kind of keep going, having a easy transport. And the other thing is just being very comfortable with how everything you've got works, so that you have to do minimal rules looking up for your own stuff.
Yeah.
So that you can be a resource for, obviously rules, exceptions and weird edge cases and FAQ stuff will come up, but it's really helpful if you know your lists inside out and that kind of thing, so that you can explain things to your opponent. Like I was saying earlier about the kind of avoiding salt thing. I think I like to begin any kind of game with saying this is all of my stuff and this is what it does. This is what I can do. And this is what you should be wary of. I'm not going to give away my strategy, but I don't want to surprise you. So here's what I can do.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff I find helpful, and also gives you something to talk about with your opponent, because you're ultimately getting matched with strangers. And if you can sit down and say, actually with Shadespire, obviously you should know how everything works, but you shouldn't explain anything because
Yeah, you don't want to show them your deck.
content to your deck is actually competitive information. But nonetheless, like talking about like, you know, hey, are you comfortable? Like even I guess with Shadespire, it was something like, hey, are you comfortable with how my warband works? Like 99% of people will be. But if say you're running skeletons and your opponent has only ever played with the core set,
Yeah.
you go like, hey, are you comfortable with how skeletons work? Like, it's a simple question, and most of the time you'll get someone who knows the game inside out and goes, yeah, that's fine. And you keep on playing. But every now and then you get the person who says no, and then you've been a good opponent at that point, right? You've not been, the worst opponents are never, like, you very rarely meet anyone mean or anyone angry or aggressive. You meet people who are kind of silent,
Right.
who sit opposite you and go like, "Moo," and that's it. And that's all you get out of them. And that's okay, and everyone has their own reasons for that, but like, getting past that means being open to saying like, hey, you comfortable how my stuff works? Okay, cool. How does your stuff work? You know, conversation starts.
Yeah.
It should be fun at the end of the day.
Good.
Good.
Advice.
Our final question and only entry in, this month's novelty Primarch question time.
We had a few entries, but,
We had quite a few. So actually I would say this. We had a lot of novelty Primarch questions. A lot of them because of the season based around Secret Santa. So apologies if we haven't read your novelty Primarch question this month. I would encourage you to keep sending them. However, for sanity's sake, we are going to only answer one because otherwise we have turned this entire section into
hot Primaris chat.
hot
Primaris chat.
Primarch.
Primarch chat.
Yeah.
There it is.
Primarch discount aisle. However, we do have one, and it is this from Jams, who writes, "It's Christmas." He puts in asterisk, assuming Christmas is not heretical. If it is, inside a suitable Ministorum-approved holiday here, and don't call the Inquisition on me. It's Christmas, anyway, and you are the God Emperor of mankind. Which of your lovely Primarch sons has brought you the best present? Love and kisses, Jams. So I feel like it would be inappropriate for me to begin another novelty Primarch question time, without talking about Magnus.
Well, yeah, we should.
But I feel like the nature of Magnus's fall is predicated on him bringing the Emperor exactly the wrong kind of present.
Yeah, that's true. He did try to bring the
He
present.
intended him to bring, I think this is the only
Gift
canonical, example of actual Primarch gift giving in the Warhammer 40k fiction, and it is Magnus bursting through the golden door saying, "Dad, Horus is bad now," and then realizing that he's broken the golden throne and needs to retreat quietly and think about what he's done.
That is the best.
So not Magnus is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
For
not
once,
Magnus.
not Magnus.
I'd take a pair of pain gloves
From Rogel Dawn.
from Rogel Dawn.
That's a very Christmassy present.
Yeah, exactly. Just mittens that cause pain. Cause agony.
Hey, dead dad.
Have this.
So are we assuming, what kind of emperor are we talking about here? Are we talking about like heresy era emperor, or are we talking about like corpse god, golden throne?
I guess like Corpse God is the most well known.
Getting a corpse some pain gloves is very funny.
Just slot them on him.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anymore.
I don't think, let me think.
I guess like if it's current era emperor, we have to rule out traitor Primarchs, I suppose, don't we? Because they wouldn't bring him a Christmas gift. But I guess what if they would? What if they did?
I think, the obvious gift is the gift that Lehman Russ has always been bringing, which is the heads of failed Primarchs. So,
And occasionally just dead things he's found outside.
Yeah, exactly, like a cat.
He just brings in stuff he's hunted.
it's ironic, but he is the Emperor's cat. Gilliman wouldn't bring a good present, I don't think.
He'd bring an earnest, well-meaning present.
I think it would be a perfunctory getting the job done present.
Oh, okay,
I think
yes,
he had
good point.
kind of a cold encounter with his father at the end of Dark Imperium.
No,
I don't
that's a
think
good
that would I think it's kind of like, it's the sort of, that is literally the socks again.
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of,
So,
I guess.
gloves from Rogel Dawn, socks from Gilliman.
Gilliman,
Okay.
like duty socks
Duty
to go with the pain gloves.
And he'll also, pointedly mention that he's still got the receipt if you want to return them, Dad.
You don't like them. If you don't like them, you can always take them back.
And then it's flounce out.
Yeah. Let's see. Lionel Johnson's not likely to deliver a very good present because he's asleep. What would Vulcan do? What would Vulcan do? I think, I don't know, maybe you're right with paying gloves. I'm trying to think, because most of them, it's not a very functional family. I guess what I'm getting at. Like,
Yeah.
most of them are either dead or hate him.
Yeah, it's a really passive-aggressive presence, you know.
Exactly.
Just gifts that, you know, have a backwards message.
How about this? The best Christmas you could give the Emperor is Jagatai Khan comes back and he has no baggage. He's fine.
Totally
It's the
chill.
white scars. It's not the chapter everyone thinks of first. It's not the chapter everyone thinks of last. They're in the middle. They're not overly dramatic. They're not secretly probably traitors like the Dark Angels. They're not secretly probably vampires like the Blood Angels. They're not secretly probably losers like the Ultramarines. They're just there and they're fine and they're like motorbikes. And he comes back and he says, "I'm back, Dad, and I'm okay. And I'm gonna everything's gonna be alright. Okay? I'm
a
gonna do
father?
a wheelie outside. It's gonna look rad. And nothing's gonna go wrong."
For the caring father, that's the greatest gift of
Exactly.
all. A sane,
I'm okay.
ordinary son.
Exactly.
I'm alright, Dad. I'm not, none of your weird gene flaws.
I
have
wasn't
made
paying attention.
for centuries.
I've been doing a wheelie and at one time a cool donut for a long time.
Yeah, that's a good gift. A lovely gift.
I mean, that's all any parent wants to know is that the kids are okay.
Kids are-
and
basically
the Emperor doesn't
happy.
have that.
No.
Because his kids are mutant supermen and they're all
Really
lost in space and mad now.
They're all really not okay at all.
Yeah. Apart from Jagatai Khan, he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
Probably.
Wherever he is.
That's all the Novelty Primark question time we've got time for. If you'd like to send us a question, or indeed a Novelty Primark time Primark question, you can email us at miniatures@crateandcrowbar.com. We should also say that we got a whole load of responses to our last month request for interest in a potential event this year. We don't have any news, so much to say that we got a lot of responses, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to look into it. Chances are it will be a non-Warhammer specific location somewhere in the south, because that's of England, because that's, or Wales, because that's where we are. That's where we are. But we will consider all sort of appropriate venues for this kind of thing. But this is the response you've given us in the emails is very much appreciated, and they basically give us the incentive we need to push on. But nothing to announce yet. If you would like to follow us, I don't know why I paused quite so long. You can follow Miniatures Monthly on Twitter at Minis Monthly. You can also follow us individually on Instagram. You are,
I'm Ludo Paints Minis, Ludo Paints Minis.
and I'm Exit Warp on Instagram, which is EXITWARP. Miniatures Monthly is supported by the Crate and Crowbar Patreon, which you can find out more information about on patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. You can also find all the Crate and Crowbar stuff on YouTube, youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. If you're interested in tabletop stuff, you might be interested in pen and paper role playing. If you're interested in pen and paper role playing, you might be interested in our extremely silly Dungeons and Dragons campaign that we put up over Christmas. It was very fun to do.
It's very fun.
And hopefully, so if you haven't encountered it already, that might be something to check out. It's up on YouTube and as part of the main Crate and Crowbar podcast feed from the middle of December onwards. Other than that, I don't think there's much to say other than Twitter.
Yeah, and I am at PCG Ludo. Don't post much miniatures stuff, but I'm there nonetheless.
Yeah,
If you want to find me.
I'm at C Thurston, which is CTHURSTEN. I don't post much at all, but I'm there nonetheless.
Yeah. That's social
Anyway.
media. Social media in 2018.
Yep. Everyone's
We'll present. We'll be present.
stopping you. Anyway, that's us for this month. We'll be back a little bit sooner in January because we'll try and get back onto the regular schedule now that Christmas madness is behind us.
Play some more games.
Enjoy whatever malign importance turns out to be.
And Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year. Welcome to 2018, probably by the time you listen to this. Thanks for listening.